Chapter 1102. The most difficult part of refining a doppelganger was not creating a physical body, but giving it a soul. The previous steps were all to create a perfect body for the doppelganger. The most important part was to give the doppelganger a soul. Generally speaking, most people who wanted to refine a doppelganger failed at this step. To refine a doppelganger that was perfectly compatible with oneself, a part of one's sea of consciousness had to be integrated into the doppelganger. However, this would undoubtedly cause great harm to the original body. The reason why Su Qingyu was confident that Yi Guqin could refine a doppelganger was because Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness was different from ordinary people's. It contained extremely vigorous soul energy. Therefore, Yi Guqin's success rate of refining a doppelganger would be much higher than ordinary people's. Let's begin. Yi Guqin, inject your soul energy into the soul-devouring crystal. Su Qingyu's expression became serious. Yi Guqin nodded slightly, and the sea of consciousness in his mind began to spin. Vigorous chaotic soul power spread out and then surged into the soul-devouring clan's soul source crystal. Yi Guqin, the soul-devouring crystal might reject you. You must not stop, Su Qingyu warned. Yi Guqin held his breath and continued to spread his chaotic soul energy. In an instant, Yi Guqin felt all kinds of negative emotions coming from the soul-devouring crystal. It was cold and dark. It was like a demon god was whispering, tempting others to fall into hell. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand such mental torture. However, Yi Guqin remained calm and focused, concealing his spirit and qi. The sword demon's will was not afraid even when facing the heavenly tribulation of Mount Saint Crossing. Not to mention a test of this level. This situation lasted for a few days. Even Yi Guqin's chaotic sea of consciousness could not bear it any longer. At this moment, Su Qingyu spoke again. Yi Guqin, the next step is the most important. I will use my means to separate a part of your sea of consciousness. This kind of pain is 10,000 times more painful than having your bones crushed. You have to be mentally prepared. I understand. Yi Guqin exhaled deeply. Physical torture was far inferior to mental torture. And this kind of severing of the sea of consciousness was simply 10,000 times more painful than being torn apart by 5 horses or being hacked into pieces. Yi Guqin broke out in a cold sweat as Su Qingyu began to execute his techniques. He felt as if a blunt axe was chopping down on his head. Humph. Yi Guqin's face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. However, he didn't let out a single scream. Even though he was clenching his teeth so hard that they bled, he still endured. I can't fail, I want to kill Gu Xiaoyang. We still have to suppress Huang Qinxiu. I still have to go to the Heavenly God's Sword Sect, kill Di Haotian with my own hands, and save Su Jianshi, so, I can't fail. Yi Guqin shouted coldly in his heart. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices at the same time. At the same time. A supreme pain that originated from the splitting of his soul was about to engulf Yi Guqin's consciousness. Su Qingyu reached out with his hand, and a ball of chaotic soul energy was separated from Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness. Only 2/3 of Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness was left, and the remaining 1/3 was separated by Su Qingyu. In the short term, Yi Guqin would be slightly affected. However, because of the uniqueness of the sea of consciousness, Yi Guqin would be able to recover in the end. Then, Su Qingyu merged 1/3 of his sea of consciousness into the soul devourer crystal. The soul energy isn't enough. Su Qingyu frowned slightly. Then, he merged 3 saint-level soul crystals into the soul devourer crystal to fill the soul devourer crystal. 1 soul devourer crystal and 3 saint-level soul crystals. This clone's soul strength will be almost invincible within the same level in the future. Su Qingyu was amazed. He felt as if he was about to create a peerless monster. In terms of soul strength, this clone wasn't any weaker than Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness. Due to the soul devourer's talent, the clone might even be stronger than the original in terms of soul Dao. After splitting 1/3 of his sea of consciousness, Yi Guqin opened his eyes. His body was sweating profusely, and his lips were as pale as paper. He was very weak, as if he had been seriously ill. Senior Su, did you succeed? Yiguchin asked with concern. Next, I'll merge this sea of consciousness origin with my physical body. As long as this step is successful, the next step will be easy, Su Qingyu said. He merged the sea of consciousness origin with the soul devourer crystal and 3 saint-level soul crystals into the clone's mind. In an instant, endless black light surged and spread on the surface of the clone like a cocoon, wrapping it up. Next, it's time to merge the sea of consciousness origin with the physical body. Success or failure depends on this, Su Qingyu said. At this point, the main steps had been completed. Next, it was up to the heavens. If they could merge completely, they would create an unprecedented peerless monster. If they failed, all their hard work would be in vain. Just as the clone was brewing in the dark demonic cocoon, all of a sudden, dark clouds loomed over Sacred Cliff College. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The rumbling thunder rolled across the sky, as if it was a warning from the heavens. It was as if it was a sign that a peerless demon was about to be born. What's going on? Why did the sky suddenly change? Yeah, it was sunny just now. Why did it suddenly become so scary? Looking at the raging thunder and lightning and the pitch-black sky, all the disciples of Sacred Cliff College were on tenterhooks. This strange phenomenon did not only occur in Sacred Cliff College. The entire Sword Empire, and even places further away, were affected by it. What's going on? Is it Duga Wubai? In the college, Bei Xian Elder looked up at the sky. He remembered that Yiguchin had asked him to borrow the secret room with the ceiling array. But on second thought, Bei Xian Elder sighed deeply and shook his head. His eyes were full of regret and regret. Sigh, it shouldn't be Duga Wubai. After all, his spiritual abode has been broken. Bei Xian Elder sighed in his heart. Just as everyone in Sacred Cliff College was discussing spiritedly. In the secret room, Yiguchin took some pills to stabilize his weakened body. He stared at the black demonic cocoon without blinking. Yiguchin could feel the terrifying power brewing in the demonic cocoon. It was as if a demonic god from the 9 underworlds was about to be born. I really don't know what kind of existence it will be. Su Qingyu sighed. He was also very curious about the final result. As time passed, Yiguchin suddenly had a strange feeling. It was as if he was in a pitch-black place, and the longevity wood core in his body was constantly releasing life essence. This feeling. Is it a doppelganger? Yiguchin's heart trembled. This experience was as if Yiguchin's 5 senses were placed in another body. At the same time, the dark demonic cocoon that had been silent all this time finally began to tremble. Cracks spread across the surface of the demonic cocoon at an extremely fast speed. Yiguchin's doppelganger was about to appear. Chapter 1103. At the same time, the dark fiend cocoon began to move. High in the sky, a black malefic star began to flicker. A strange mysterious power of the Star Palace descended from the void and fused into the dark demonic cocoon. As soon as the star force appeared, Su Qingyu immediately sensed it. A hint of surprise appeared on his face as he said, "Is this the power of a star chart?" The power of a star chart. Yiguchin's expression changed slightly. Some peerless geniuses had birth charts that were compatible with the stars in the sky and could use the power of the stars to cultivate. The Starry Sword Pavilion was an overlord force that was very good at using the power of the stars. The 7 great bears, including Gu Xiaoyang, could use the power of the stars to cultivate. Apart from that, Yiguchin had also encountered Gu Zun, who had the 7-kill birth chart, and Princess Luo Ho who had the Luo Ho birth chart. However, Yiguchin had never awakened the power of a birth chart. He had always thought he did not have a birth chart. However, it seemed like that was not the case. That black malefic star. Could it be the legendary Heavenly Calamity Lone Star? Su Qingyu's soul perception spread out. Through the secret chamber, he saw the dark star in the sky. Heavenly Calamity Lone Star. Yiguchin was puzzled. The Heavenly Calamity Lone Star is also known as the Heavenly Calamity Lone Star. It's an extremely ominous malefic star. It's known as the Heavenly Calamity. Su Qingyu said solemnly as he looked at Yi Guqin. Your name is Yi Guqin, which has the word Guqin in it. It matches the Tianxia Guqin. Perhaps you have a stellar life providence, but it has yet to awaken. Now, this power has been transferred to your avatar. Su Qingyu guessed. Is that so? Yi Guqin murmured inwardly. However, only he knew the reason he had not awakened the Heavenly Calamity Lone Star. The main reason was that his soul was the Sword Devil, Dugu Wubai. Perhaps, Yi Guqin originally had a Heavenly Calamity life chart, but his soul was possessed by the Sword Devil. Therefore, he had yet to awaken his birth chart. And now, the birth of Yi Guqin's clone was equivalent to another Yi Guqin. That was why it attracted the power of the Heavenly Fiend Star. However, this might be a good thing for your doppelganger. Although the Lonesome Star is a malefic star, it can bring about a great increase in power, Su Qingyu murmured. Yi Guqin's eyes also lit up. He had the innate talent of the soul-devouring clan, the battle god fiend body, and the power of the heavenly ferocious birth chart. How powerful would his clone be in the end? At this moment, the surface of the dark demonic cocoon was covered with cracks. The entire demonic cocoon was pulsating like a heart. As for the Tianxia star in outer space, it was also faintly discernible. When a birth chart master was born, the other birth chart masters would sense it as well. Within a dark palace in the Mola dynasty, Princess Luo Xian was regulating her breathing. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something. Her figure flashed and landed on the roof of the palace. She looked up. Her cold and beautiful eyes under the half-mask stared at the flickering malefic star in outer space. Another birth chart master. It's the Tianxia star. Who could it be? Princess Luo Xian murmured. On the other side of the South Horizon region. In a secret cultivation place. A scruffy-looking young man wielding the 7-kill ancient saber and swinging it tirelessly suddenly stopped. He raised his ordinary face and looked at the flickering black malefic star in outer space. The Tianxia star, the lonesome star, this young man was none other than Gu Zun. He muttered to himself. The name Tianxia star reminded him of a fated opponent. Unfortunately, he's already dead. He didn't die in my hands. Gu Zun's expression darkened as he swung his saber. Everyone in the South Horizon region could see the Tianxia star flashing. It was not only the birth chart masters who could sense it. Some powerful existences could sense it as well. However, they did not react. They only paid attention to it for a moment before dismissing it with a smile. Although birth chart masters were rare, it was not like there were none. Therefore, it did not attract the attention of these powerhouses. In a secret chamber in Sacred Cliff College, Yi Guqin, naturally, was unaware that the appearance of the Tianxia star had caused a commotion in the South Horizon region. At this moment, he was paying close attention to the dark demon cocoon. The Tianxia star's power had completely fused with the dark demon cocoon. Naturally, this did not mean the clone would be able to unleash the Tianxia star's full power. It was just that the Tianxia star's power had been transferred from Yi Guqin to his clone. Rumble. At this moment, a loud rumbling sound rang from the dark demon cocoon. The sound was like thunder, but it also sounded like the explosion of the beginning of chaos. Senior Su, what's going on? Yi Guqin asked with concern. I'm afraid the result will be out soon. We'll know whether it's a success or a failure soon, Su Qingyu said solemnly. As soon as Su Qingyu finished speaking, the dark demon cocoon exploded. The entire dark demonic cocoon suddenly exploded. Billowing demonic chi swept out and instantly filled the entire secret chamber. A powerful shockwave shattered the walls of the secret chamber. On the ground, the ceiling formation lit up with a dazzling light. This secret chamber was the place where Great Elder Ime, Confuzi, and the others cultivated in seclusion. One could imagine how powerful the formation was. Even so, the secret chamber still shook violently under the impact of the fiend chi. In the billowing fiend chi, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Yi Guqin and Su Qingyu immediately looked over. A figure appeared and disappeared in the fiend chi. At the same time, a low and slightly hoarse voice could be heard. If I become a demon, I'll bring disaster to the bound of universe. If I become a king, the world will respect the emperor. Accompanied by a domineering and arrogant voice, a figure slowly appeared in front of Yi Guqin and Su Qingyu. The figure's face was almost identical to Yi Guqin's. It was as if they were cast from the same mold. The difference was that this clone's hair was as white as snow. His left eye was a normal black color, but his right eye was a dark golden color with blood-red patterns mixed in. It gave off an ancient and mysterious feeling. This is my clone. When he saw this clone, Yi Guqin also took a deep breath. His chest rose and fell. This feeling was very strange. It was as if he was looking at himself in a mirror. He could feel all of this clone's thoughts, personality, and emotions. It was as if it was another him. The only difference between the original body and the clone was their temperament. Yi Guqin's original temperament was calm, deep, and unperturbed. He had inherited the sword demon's calm temperament. However, although this clone's face was almost the same, it had a hint of evil charm. It was as if it was the real sword demon. It was domineering, arrogant, and evil. Could it be? When Su Qingyu saw the clone, a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. Senior Su, what's wrong? Yi Guqin asked. That dark gold eye, could it be the soul-devouring demon eye of the royal family of the soul-devouring clan? Su Qingyu's tone had a hint of surprise. Chapter 1104. Soul Eater Royal Family, Soul Eater Demon Eyes. What's that? Yi Guqin was puzzled. Actually, I'm not too sure either. I've only seen it in the Su family's library, Su Qingyu continued. Among the Soul Eater clan, the most powerful are the pure-blooded Soul Eater royal family. The symbol of the Soul Eater royal family is a pair of dark golden Soul Eater demon eyes, Su Qingyu said. Is Soul Eater Flame a member of the Soul Eater royal family? Yi Guqin was also slightly surprised. Su Qingyu nodded and said, that should be it. Fortunately, his physical body is sealed and he can't use his Soul Eater demon eyes. Otherwise, even with your God Devourer sword, he would be doomed. But in that case, your doppelganger should be a half-blood Soul Eater royal family, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guqin thought for a while and agreed. In fact, from the first time he saw his doppelganger, he felt that this doppelganger had completely inherited Soul Eater Flame's talent. That head of white hair was the best proof. Because Soul Eater Flame's sealed physical body was also full of white hair. However, Yi Guqin did not expect his doppelganger to inherit the talent of the Soul Eater royal family. Of course, because the doppelganger had only absorbed Soul Eater Flame's Soul Eater crystal, only one of his eyes had turned into a Soul Eater demon eye. He was considered a half-blood Soul Eater royal family. What ability does the Soul Eater demon eye have? Yi Guqin could not help but be curious. I'm not too sure either. But since your doppelganger has manifested the Soul Eater demon eye, he will naturally slowly figure out its ability. But no matter what, the Soul Eater demon eye is definitely not inferior to a gifted superpower. It might even be more powerful than an ordinary gifted superpower, Su Qingyu judged. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. This doppelganger, regardless of anything else, was definitely comparable to a 7th grade Heaven's favorite with the Soul Eater demon eye alone. Original body. The doppelganger looked at Yi Guqin and said. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. There was a strange connection between him and his clone. Even without speaking, they could understand each other's thoughts and share their thoughts. Let's give you a name. We can't just call you doppelganger, Yi Guqin thought for a moment, then said, how about we call you Dugu Chuma? The name Dugu was taken from the surname of Dugu Wubai. The two words seek the devil indicated that this avatar was his demonized avatar. It was destined to rule over slaughter and seek the devil with a single thought. Duguchilma, ha, what a great name. From now on, I am Duguchilma. Dugu's devil-seeking eyes flashed with a cold light. His temperament was devilish, and his white hair fluttered in the wind. Yiguchen smiled faintly. There was a hidden meaning behind the name. In the future, if Yiguchen had the ability to fuse with his avatar, he would be able to do so. Dugu Wubai. It made one's blood boil and was exceptionally seductive. She was like a demon in the night, charming and enchanting. At this moment, the woman in the black dress lifted her chin and looked at the phenomenon in the sky. Her eyes were watery as she murmured, "The demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon has finally appeared." The demonic extermination sex origin technique, the demonic extermination heart sutra, can only be cultivated to perfection by the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon. Because no one has been able to cultivate the demonic extermination heart sutra to perfection, the demonic extermination sect has always been suppressed by the heavenly god sword sect and the battle god saber sect, as well as other forces. The demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon has appeared. Does it mean that the hope of reviving the demonic extermination sect has appeared? No matter who you are or where you are, one will definitely find you. The woman in the black dress bit her lips and smiled. Her watery eyes were full of intelligence and craftiness, like a peerless demon. If someone was here and saw the woman in the black dress, they would definitely recognize her. Because she was one of the most famous elites of the demonic extermination sect, Demonis Wan, her. At the same time, in the Starfall Mountain where the Starry Sword Pavilion was located. In a pavilion, a young man was wearing a Big Dipper robe and a Mizar star crown. His face was handsome and his eyes were like stars. It was Gu Xiaoyang. He frowned slightly and looked at the sky. First, the malefic star appeared, then the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens phenomenon. What kind of monster has appeared? Gu Xiaoyang thought. He naturally wouldn't think of Yiguchen. In his eyes, Yiguchen was a small figure who had been dead for a long time. In the sky, the purple-winged bat dragon flapped its wings and soared into the sky. A handsome figure stood on the back of the bat dragon. His purple hair fluttered in the wind and he had a domineering aura. It was Huang Qianqiu, who had left the Sword Dynasty and was preparing to return to the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion. His purple eyes looked at the demon emperor phenomenon in the sky and a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. Looks like the upcoming battles between the elites are getting more and more interesting. However, the demon emperor and the malefic star have to bow before me, Huang Qianqiu. Huang Qianqiu's lips curled into a confident smile. He had the desolate sky body and his battle strength was extraordinary. He could even put up a fight against Dihaoyan. Therefore, he wasn't afraid of the demon emperor. In a forbidden area of the heavenly god sword sect, a golden longsword covered in crystals floated in the middle of the array. There were a total of 10 types of special flames gathered in one place and burned the sealed longsword. At the same time, there was another golden longsword with a supreme aura that was also burning the outer shell of the sealed longsword. A figure sat at the side with his legs crossed. His long golden hair was dazzling and his silver eyes were extremely deep. His every move exuded the perfect aura of a celestial being, as if he was a deity. It was the heavenly god sword sect's clear sky true dragon, Dihaoyan. He raised his head and looked at the demon emperor descends to the 9 heavens that appeared in the sky. His lips curled into a faint smile and he shook his head. A mere demon is not worth mentioning. Chapter 1105. The Demon King's descent to the 9th heaven phenomenon had shaken the entire Nantian region. Previously, when the heavenly demon Lone Star appeared, only a small number of people paid attention to it. However, when the Demon King's descent to the 9th heaven phenomenon appeared, almost the entire Nantian region noticed it. Many people suspected that the heavenly demon Lone Star and the phenomenon might have been caused by the same person. However, there were more people who were doubtful. Regardless of whether it was the heavenly demon fate or the demon king's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon, as long as anyone had one of them, he or she would be considered a genius. If both situations were caused by the same person, it would be too terrifying. Just as the people in the Nantian region were discussing it. In a mysterious space. A middle-aged man in plain cotton clothes sat in the void with his legs crossed. He had a handsome face, and his eyes were pure black like a bottomless abyss. They were dark and deep, and it was extremely terrifying. I felt it. That aura is the other half of my pure demon body. The handsome middle-aged man muttered to himself with a hoarse voice. In the next moment, he covered his forehead with one hand, and a look of confusion and struggle flashed across his dark eyes. Vaguely, he muttered a sentence. Your disciple is not dead yet. This figure was none other than Feng Manlu, who was possessed by Jitian. Feng Manlu's handsome face kept changing expressions, and in the end, it turned into a strange and eerie coldness. No matter if it is the other half of the pure demon body or the god devourer sword, I will get them both. When the time comes, the name of the demon sword emperor, Feng Jitian, will shake the entire Nantian region. Feng Manlu laughed loudly, and his black hair danced in the wind. Billowing demon chi accompanied by a shocking sword essence swept out in all directions, and the fluctuations were extremely terrifying. The entire void around him instantly shattered, and endless cracks spread across the void. Not long after, the demon king's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon finally dissipated. However, there were still countless cultivators in the Nantian region discussing it. It was obvious that everyone was very curious about which peerless genius had caused such a phenomenon. At that moment, in the secret chamber of Sacred Cliff College, Yiguchen also noticed the commotion outside. I didn't expect your clone to be able to cause the demon king's descent to the ninth heaven phenomenon. Su Qingyu had obviously sensed the anomaly in the sky outside. Even Su Qingyu, a saint, could not help but sigh. What kind of monster had he created? I didn't expect to be augmented by a phenomenon as well. Yiguchen sighed. Up until now, he had only seen two people with phenomenons. They were Di Haotian and Shui. Yiguchen himself had once caused the phenomenon of flowers falling from the sky and golden lotuses surging from the ground. But that was achieved with the help of Mount Saint crossing, which meant that he had the potential to become a saint. However, Senior Su, Duguchioma's aura. Yiguchen looked at Duguchioma and frowned slightly. Duguchio-mo had a head full of white hair. His right eye was a dark gold soul-devouring demon eye. His entire person looked devilishly charming. However, his aura was only at the body refinement realm. This caused Yiguchen to be puzzled. The body refining realm was one of the 4 initial stages of cultivation. Body forging, profound chi refining, and spirit. The hidden latch of life and death, and the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. After that was the divine dwelling realm. Although Duguchioma's aura was terrifying, his cultivation level was obviously a little shocking. This is normal. It's almost impossible for you to refine a clone to be at the same cultivation level as your original body. For example, if a saint refines a clone, wouldn't he be able to create another saint? Su Qingyu explained. When Yiguchen heard this, he suddenly understood and nodded slightly. Indeed, it was a little unrealistic to refine a clone to be at the same cultivation level as the original body. However, you don't have to worry about this. Duguchioma's cultivation speed is very fast. With the connate purple chi, it won't take long for him to catch up to your cultivation level, and even surpass it. Su Qingyu smiled faintly. Oh right, there's also the connate purple chi. Yiguchen had forgotten about this. The connate purple chi was a special ability of 7th grade prodigies. It was known as a cultivation accelerator. Its previous owner, Zi Donglai, also relied on this purple chi to cultivate faster than ordinary people. If Duguchioma refined this connate purple chi, his cultivation speed would increase again. Chioma, you can refine this connate purple chi. Yiguchen handed the connate purple chi to Duguchioma. Okay. Duguchilma nodded slightly, then opened his mouth and directly swallowed the connate purple chi into his stomach. In the blink of an eye, he had refined the connate purple chi. So fast. Yiguchin was surprised. After all, his body is the pure demon body formed by the God Devourer sword. It naturally has a part of the devouring power, Su Qingyu said. Yiguchin exhaled a deep breath. His spirits were lifted. Duguchilma had the celestial demon body, the connate purple chi, the soul-devouring demon eye, the heavenly demon fate chart, and the demon king descends to the 9th heaven. With these 5 talents, he was simply a freak of nature. Now, you can give the God Devourer sword to him. It can be transported between the two of you, Su Qingyu said. Yiguchin nodded and took out the God Devourer sword. When he held the God Devourer sword in the past, the demonic intent of the sword would erode his will. But now, that demonic intent obviously had no effect on him. Although it had no effect on him, it was still suitable to give the God Devourer sword to Duguchilma. Duguchilma took the God Devourer sword. The corners of his mouth curled up into an evil sneer. This sword is suitable for slaughter. Then, Duguchilma brushed the sword with one hand. The entire God Devourer sword was covered with a layer of black crystals. With this layer of black crystals, no one could see through the God Devourer sword. Even supremacies and sages would not be able to sense the immemorial demon sword's aura if they did not check carefully. As expected, the doppelganger seems to be able to control the God Devourer sword better, Yiguchin thought to himself when he saw this. But on second thought, Duguchilma's physical body was a pure demon body formed by Ji Tian using the God Devourer sword. It was reasonable for it to be compatible with the God Devourer sword. But as long as the doppelganger could control it, Yiguchin would naturally be able to control it as well. Oh right, if you have the chance in the future, you might want to get in touch with the demonic sect of destruction, Su Qingyu suddenly said. Demonic sect of destruction? Why? Yiguchin asked. The demonic sect of destruction was one of the 3 major sects in the Nantian region. Although it was suppressed by many forces and kept a low profile, there was no doubt that it had a strong foundation and was still an overlord force. Yiguchin had also heard about it. When the founder of the demonic sect of destruction, the world devastator Demon Venerable was born, it also caused the Demon Emperor to descend to the 9 heavens. The demonic heart sutra that he created is very suitable for your doppelganger to cultivate, Su Qingyu explained. I see, Yiguchin said. But the demonic heart sutra was the core cultivation method of the demonic sect of destruction. It would definitely not be taught to outsiders. Yiguchin kept this matter in his heart. He probably would not have the time to do it in the short term. Because next, other than dealing with the possible calamity of the Sword Dynasty, he still had to think of a way to save the Sword Alliance Master, Proud Divine Prefecture, and rebuild his spiritual abode. Then, he would face the most important battle of the prodigies. Chapter 1106. Chiou-mo, what do you plan to do next? Yiguchin asked. Although he and his clone were telepathically connected. But he always felt that if he spoke, he would get used to it. Main body, I want to go somewhere. Duguchilmo's eyes flickered with a faint cold light. Where? Yiguchin asked. Yiguchin was not surprised by Duguchilmo's choice. Duguchilmo was only in the body refining realm now. Staying by his side would limit his development instead. Moreover, although Duguchilmo was Yiguchin's clone, he also had the ability to test himself independently. It was as if another Yiguchin was thinking. Of course, Duguchilmo's thinking was absolutely subservient to Yiguchin's main body. But if there was no need, Yiguchin would not interfere with the growth of his clone. The path I walk is a path of slaughter. The environment of the Sword Dynasty is indeed not suitable for my growth. Instead, another dynasty is most suitable for me. Yiguchin looked at Duguchilmo. The two opened their mouths almost in unison. Mola Dynasty. Ha, I really understand me, Duguchilmo said. Then go, but be careful, Yiguchin said. Don't worry, with the God Devourer sword, I can devour the enemy's flesh and essence to grow. Unless I'm completely destroyed and crushed into powder, it's very difficult for me to die, Duguchyo Mo said. Yi Guchen nodded. If Duguchyo Mo was in danger, he would be the first to detect it. Then, he looked at Su Qingyu and said, Senior Su, there are still 2 soul source crystals left. They should be of some help to your primordial spirit recovery. Indeed, but during the period when I absorb and refine the 2 soul source crystals, I may fall into a deep sleep. At that time, everything will depend on you. Su Qingyu did not decline and said. Senior Su has already helped this Yi Guchen enough. Senior can rest in peace and recover, said Yi Guchen. Su Qingyu nodded and placed the remaining 2 saints' soul source crystals into his body. After that, his nascent spirit lay down in the soul-storing coffin once more and began to recover in a deep sleep. 2 saint crystals could not restore Su Qingyu's primordial spirit to its peak state, but it could at least restore some of his strength. After everything was settled, Yi Guchen finally heaved a sigh of relief. After that, Yi Guchen opened the secret chamber, and Dugu and Chuma also came out in a flash. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, appeared as usual. He discovered that the entire academy was filled with discussions. The appearance of the lone star and the appearance of the demon king ascending to the 9 heavens. I wonder which peerless monster has appeared. Sigh, I wonder if that unparalleled demon king will show up at the battlefield of prodigies this time. If senior brother Dugu's spiritual dwelling had not been broken, he would definitely not be weaker than that unparalleled demon king given his identity as a saint. The disciples of the Divine Cliff Academy were all discussing the abnormal phenomenon from before. Many people talked and the topic fell on Yi Guchen. This time, I seem to have heard that there are people in the Sword Dao Alliance who oppose senior brother Dugu becoming the Sword Son. This is too much. Everyone knows about senior brother Dugu's performance in the Sacred Dynasty treasure. Even Hua Wuxiu of the Hua family was killed by senior brother Dugu. Some disciples discussed and were filled with righteous indignation. Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a strange look when he heard this, but he did not feel anything. Because he knew that Etienne would at least give him the position of Sword Son. In the next few days, Yi Guchen had been in seclusion to nurture his sea of consciousness. After all, 1/3 of his sea of consciousness origin was given to Dugu Chuma. On the other side, on a mountain range at the border of the Sword Dynasty, Dugu Chuma stood at the top. He was dressed in a black robe, and his white hair was 3,000 feet long. His dark golden right eye was deep and demonic. His entire body was emitting an evil aura. Suddenly, the muscles on his face moved slightly, and his entire face was slightly different from Yi Guchen's. Because in the Sacred Dynasty treasure, many of the Molo dynasty's geniuses had seen Yi Guchen. Dugu Chuma and Yi Guchen looked the same, so he needed to slightly change his appearance. Dugu Chuma's physical body was originally molded, so he could easily change his appearance without relying on external objects. After Dugu Chuma changed his appearance, he looked even more handsome and demonic. The dark golden soul-devouring demon I had a demonic charm. Not only did I inherit the talent of the soul-devouring clan, but I also perfectly inherited all the moves of Hun Miayen, including the 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth. In addition, after completely controlling the god-devouring sword, I also explored the signature swordsmanship left by the demon sword Emperor Jitian, the demon 13 swords. But I, Dugu Chuma, will not be limited by the shackles of my predecessors. I will eventually create a swordsmanship that belongs to me, Dugu Chuma. Dugu Chuma's personality was very different from Yi Guchen's, leaning towards the dark and demonic side. But his heart of swordsmanship was exactly the same. He had the soul-devouring clan's Hun Miayen and the demon sword Emperor Jitian's ultimate techniques, but he still had the ambition to create his own swordsmanship martial art. Dugu Chuma looked in the direction of the Molo dynasty, and a bloodthirsty coldness flashed in his eyes. Killing 1 is a sin, killing 10,000 is a hero, killing 9 million is a hero. I, Dugu Chuma, will start my path of killing in the Molo dynasty. Gu Xiaoyang, Huang Qianqiu, Di Haoyan, none of you can escape. Dugu Chioma stomped his foot, and with a loud bang, the entire mountain range collapsed. His figure turned into a black shadow and swept toward the Molo dynasty. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. In this month, the chaos in the Sword dynasty, under the control of Heavenly Love and the others, was finally completely suppressed. The entire Sword dynasty had preliminarily restored order. But as long as one had the slightest ability to judge the situation, one would understand. The situation in the Sword dynasty could be said to be a storm, and the 5 fake saint aristocratic families would not let it go so easily. What Heavenly Love and the Sword Dao Alliance faced next was the revenge of the 5 aristocratic families. On this day, Yi Guqin, who was in seclusion, was suddenly called out by Xuanlian. "Brother Xuanlian, what's the matter?" Yi Guqin asked. "The first elder ordered us to go to the Sword Emperor Ridge," Xuanlian said. "Is the Sword Sun conferment ceremony going to be held?" Yi Guqin asked. "It should be, but there may be other news," Xuanlian said. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. It was not that he coveted the position of Sword Sun. It was to obtain the qualification to participate in the battlefield of prodigies. But there may be some criticism in the Sword Dao Alliance about Brother Dugu becoming the Sword Sun. Xuanlian frowned. "I believe Sword King can settle everything," Yi Guqin said with a smile. "Perhaps in the eyes of those opponents. He was a prodigy with a broken divine dwelling, and was no longer qualified to be the Sword Sun. After all, no matter how weak the Sword dynasty was now, it still held the title of the First Dynasty. One could imagine if the Sword Sun of the First Dynasty was a cripple with a broken divine dwelling. If word got out, how much criticism would the Sword dynasty attract? Even if he participated in the battlefield of prodigies, it would only attract the ridicule of other forces and dynasties. Chapter 1107. A few days later, the news of the Sword Emperor City's Sword Sun conferment ceremony had spread throughout the Sword dynasty. Although the Sword dynasty's internal strife had been quelled, the threat was still there. The 5 aristocratic families were still a huge threat. Heavenly Love had chosen to hold the Sword Sun conferment ceremony now to calm the people of the Sword dynasty. As the news of the Sword Sun conferment ceremony spread, naturally, the thing that attracted the most discussion was who would become the 13th swordsman. Among the 13 Sword Sons, the most talked about was Jiankui, who would become Jiankui. As the aristocratic families left, the geniuses of the aristocratic families could not join in the fight. As for the geniuses of Heavenly Saint, Sun Moon, and Long River, it was impossible for them to become Sword Sons. After such a selection, the geniuses of Sacred Cliff College and Tianxian College had a higher chance of becoming Sword Sun. Of course, the most talked about one was Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's legend in the Sword dynasty was needless to say. His performance in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure was even more eye-catching. Hua Wuxiu had died in Yi Guqin's hands. What was even more shocking was that Yi Guqin had the ability to exchange blows with Huang Qianqiu. Although Huang Qianqiu had broken his spiritual dwelling in the end, Yi Guqin's stunning performance could not be overshadowed. Huang Qianqiu was a supreme genius. Even the geniuses of the overlords would not have a good ending if they fought against him. Yi Guqin could only be considered a first-tier genius in the Sword dynasty. Such a result was extremely shocking. If Yi Guqin's spiritual dwelling had not been broken, Jiankui's position would not have been discussed at all, because the result would have been obvious. But now, the news of Yi Guqin's spiritual dwelling being broken had spread everywhere. Almost all the dynasties knew that the natural saint of the Sword dynasty, Dugu Wubai, had his spiritual dwelling broken and his genius halo dimmed. In that case, Jiankui's position would not be a problem. Even the position of Sword Sun would not be given to Yi Guqin. Because no dynasty would allow a cripple to represent the dynasty in the Battle of the Geniuses. A few days later, the remaining geniuses of the Sword dynasty gathered in the Sword Emperor city. A large group of martial artists also entered the city's Sword Emperor city to witness the sword conferment ceremony. Yi Guqin and the other geniuses from the Divine Cliff Academy naturally rushed to the Sword dynasty. Mu Xingzu, Suki Miyazaki, and the rest of the Sword Son of the Sword Dynasty. After Yi Gu-chen and the others entered the Sword Emperor city, they found an inn to stay in for the time being. Not long after Lin, sword 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 sun sword 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 and sword 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 sword. Brother Dugu, you guys are finally here. Jian Jinghong smiled as he walked over. Sword 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 was sword 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 of. You are. Yi Gu-chen looked a little puzzled. Ha, Brother Dugu, have you forgotten us so quickly? Among the three young men, a handsome young man with hair tied up by a jade crown laughed. Yi Gu-chen immediately reacted when he heard the voice. Brother Kenpo. Ha, that's right. I thought Brother Dugu wouldn't recognize me after I took off my mask. Kenpo shook his head and laughed. Yi Gu-chen instantly understood. The Sword Sun conferment ceremony was imminent. Kenpo and the other Sword Sons of the previous generation had temporarily taken off their masks. Of course, with Kenpo's harvest in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove, there was no doubt that he would regain the position of Sword Son. Since I'm no longer the Sword Son, it's not appropriate to call me Kenpo. My real name is Su Ziheo, Su Ziheo said. Brother Su. Yi Gu-chen cupped his fists slightly. As for the two young men beside him, they were naturally Jian Wu and Sword 7. The two of them had also told Yi Gu-chen their real names. One was called Yushan, while the other was called Xiao Jun. Brother Dugu, you might have to bear a lot of pressure and criticism during the Sword Sun conferment ceremony, Su Ziheo said softly. He naturally felt indignant for Yi Gu-chen. I believe Sword King will make a wise decision. Yi Gu-chen wasn't worried. He didn't care about the criticism, as long as the result was good. Another day passed, and the day of the Sword Sun conferment ceremony finally arrived. It was held in the palace at the center of the Sword Sovereign City. It was also the base of the Sword Dao Alliance. It could be said that the Sword Dao Alliance was the core of the entire Sword Dynasty. Yi Gu-chen and the others, under the lead of Sacred Cliff College's Great Elder Yi Mei, arrived at the Sword Sovereign Palace at the center of the palace complex. At this moment, there was a sea of people outside the Sword Sovereign Palace. As far as the eye could see, there was a black mass of heads. And in front, there was a group of venerables with extraordinary auras sitting upright. There were more than 100 of them. These experts were more than 100 lords who were loyal to the Sword Dao Alliance. More than 200 of the 360 lords of the Sword Dynasty had left with the 5 aristocratic families. Of the remaining 150, only 100 stood firmly on the side of the rogue cultivators. The remaining 50 or so did not come to participate in the conferment ceremony. Among this group of lords, there was someone Yi Gu-chen recognized. It was the Skywind Lord, Qin Zhen. However, Qin Zhen's expression didn't look too good. He looked at Yi Gu-chen with a hint of worry. Yi Gu-chen's rise in the Sword Dynasty started from the Skywind Ridge, so Qin Zhen naturally looked at Yi Gu-chen in a new light. However, Yi Gu-chen would probably be in a lot of trouble today. Seeing Yi Gu-chen's arrival, the surroundings became even noisier. However, no one dared to say anything presumptuous to Yi Gu-chen. At this moment, a group of more than 10 people walked out from the Sword Sovereign Palace. The one walking in the center was naturally Yi Qing. Ken Fuzi and Wu Hongyan were among the 10 people. The rest of the people, whether in terms of aura or pressure, were not inferior to Ken Fuzi and Wu Hongyan by much. Obviously, these 10 people were the Sword Dao Alliance's top fighting force, more than 10 pseudo-saint experts. Greetings, Deputy Alliance Leader, Lords. As soon as Yi Qing and the others walked out, the entire Sword Sovereign Palace was filled with cheers. It could be said that if it weren't for Yi Qing's powerful methods, the chaos in the Sword Dynasty wouldn't have been quelled so quickly. Everyone, please dispense with the formalities. I'm sure you're all aware that we're here for the Sword Sun conferment ceremony. Although there were some accidents in the expedition to the Sacred Dynasty's hidden treasure, the Sword Sun contest still counts. After tallying the gains of all the Sky Prides, we've decided on the candidates for this year's 13 Sword Sons. Next, we'll announce the results. I Ching did things without the slightest hesitation. Next, we'll announce that the successor to Jian Shisan's position is. I Ching said. Yi Guqin, Jian Jinghong, Su Zihao, and the others had complicated expressions on their faces when they heard this. Jian Shisan had killed himself in front of them. Yi Guqin and the others didn't even know what Jian Shisan's real name was. His real name, like his face, was forever hidden under the grimace mask. However, when I Ching announced Jian Shisan's successor, Yi Guqin was a little surprised. Chapter 1108. The successor of Jian Shisan is. Kong Kong, Yi Tianqing said indifferently. Once these words were spoken, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Because compared to Yi Guqin, Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and other famous heaven's prides, Kong Kong was well known. Not many people knew about Kong Kong. His fame was limited to the Divine Cliff Academy. Moreover, it was a notorious reputation. For example, he had stolen some beautiful senior sister's undergarment and so on. Among the Sacred Cliff College crowd, Kong Kong scratched his head and stood up with an embarrassed look. What, don't tell me that this little monk is Kong Kong. How old is he? How can he be the sword son? That's not right. This little monk is actually at the divine dwelling stage. My God, how old is he? When they saw Kong Kong walk out, the warriors present were first stunned and instinctively showed doubts. But after sensing Kong Kong's aura, the doubts in their eyes instantly turned to surprise. A little monk who was not more than 12 years old had the cultivation of the divine dwelling stage. This kind of strength was indeed monstrous. Although Yi Guqin was a little surprised, he could understand. After all, Kong Kong came from the Western Brilliance domain and was the 9th generation Sword Buddha. He had a mysterious special constitution. Even Xuanlian, who was also the 9th generation Sword Buddha, chose to protect Kong Kong. It was clear that Kong Kong definitely had some kind of background. After knowing that Kong Kong was at the divine dwelling stage, the noise in the audience also subsided. Such monstrous talent was indeed qualified to be the Sword Son. Then, Yi Tianqing continued to announce the winner of the Sword Son. The successor of the 12th sword position, Ling Moyin. When these words came out, it set off another round of discussion. Another heaven's pride of Sacred Cliff College. It seems that it's because the heaven's prides of the aristocratic families were excluded, some lords commented. At this moment, Ling Moyin's beautiful face revealed a faint smile. Her brother had regained his strength, and the culprit, Hua Wuxiu, had been killed by Yi Guqin. Ling Moyin's heart had been completely undone. She was no longer cold and indifferent, and had returned to her previous gentle and amiable self. Yi Guqin was not surprised that Ling Moyin could become the Sword Son. Only Ling Moyin, Kong Kong, and the others had a chance to be selected. However, luck was sometimes very important. The successor to Jian Shi's position, Meng Churen, Heavenly Love said again. Everyone's gaze suddenly shifted to Tianxian College's side, landing on a young girl in a light blue dress. Her features were picturesque, and her skin was as fair as jade. Meng Churen was the pride of Tianxian College. She was slightly weaker than Mu Xingzu and Suki Miyazaki, but she wasn't weak either. Most importantly, she was the granddaughter of a rogue cultivator of the Sword Dao Alliance. Hearing that Meng Churen had become the Sword Son, an old man with white eyebrows beside Heavenly Love smiled. His name was Meng Zhen, and he was a rogue cultivator of the rogue cultivator camp. Meng Churen was his granddaughter. Meng Zhen was all smiles. What he was most proud of was this granddaughter of his, as well as his other disciple. Next, Heavenly Love announced the successor to Sword 10. It was Suki Miyazaki from Tianxian College. This didn't cause much of a stir. Suki Miyazaki was originally ranked 8th on the sword ranking. Even if the prodigies of the aristocratic families weren't excluded, Suki Miyazaki still had a chance to compete for the Sword Son position. Then, the successors to Sword 8 and Kenpo were Yushan and Xiao Jun. They were the Sword Sons of the rogue cultivator camp. One was Jian Wu, and the other was Sword 7. This time, Their sword son's ranking was a little lower, but to the two of them, it didn't really matter. The successor to Sword 7 is Mu Xingzu from Tianxian College, Heavenly Love announced. Mu Xingzu's selection stirred up a lot of discussion. The reason was simple. She was Yi Guqin's disciple. Just as the entire scene began to clamor, Wu Hongyan directly took a step forward. Her snow-white jade-like hands were clenched into fists, and a foxy and dangerous smile appeared on her face as she said, "My Goddess Academy's disciple has been chosen as the sword child." Hearing Wu Hongyan's threatening words, the noisy crowd immediately quieted down. Seeing this, Wu Hongyan snorted charmingly and returned to her original position. Most of the discussion about Mu Xingzu came from Yi Guqin. But only Yi Guqin knew that Mu Xingzu had the ability to become the sword son. Heavenly Love shook her head and smiled at Wu Hongyan, then continued to announce. The successor to Sword 6 is Su Zihao. Su Zihao was Kenpo from before. This time, he also successfully became the sword son and advanced 3 places. No one objected to Su Zihao becoming Sword 6. They thought it was natural. Next, the successor to Jian Wu's position is Ling Mo Shu from Sacred Cliff College, Heavenly Love announced. Hearing those words, everyone's gazes carried complicated emotions as they looked towards the one-armed black-clothed youth within the Divine Cliff Academy. Ling Mo Shu's experience was legendary. He was once ranked 10th on the sword ranking and a disciple of the Holy Emblem, but he was beaten into the abyss by Hua Wuxiu. Who would have thought that Ling Mo Shu could transform his spiritual abode and recultivate the sword in his left hand and rise again? Many people respected Ling Mo Shu. Jian Wu's identity was well-deserved. After the announcement of Jian Wu's candidate, the atmosphere suddenly became a little tense. Because there were only 4 places left, including Jinkui. Many of the geniuses present also had a hunch that they would not be chosen. However, they were also very curious about who could win the remaining 4 Sword Son positions. Heavenly Love looked around at the crowd and announced calmly, the successor to Sword 4 is Luo Yu. As soon as she said that, the whole place fell silent again. Some people's eyes were filled with doubts and even more puzzlement. Who was Luo Yu? Many people had never heard of this name. In the crowd, a handsome young man in a blue shirt stepped out. When they saw this figure, some people suddenly exclaimed, "This person is so familiar. It seems to be Sword 2. Isn't Sword 2 the sword son of the aristocratic family? You're too uninformed. Didn't you say that Luo Yu is a spy from the itinerant cultivator camp and has been hiding among the aristocratic family's sword sons?" Another person said. "I see." Everyone suddenly understood. But then, they looked puzzled. Luo Yu's previous identity as Sword 2 was definitely not weak, and he had been hiding in the aristocratic family camp for a long time. It could be said that his contributions were not negligible, but he was only ranked 4th. How is that possible? Brother Luo Yu is only ranked 4th. A surprised shout sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that the person who spoke was Meng Churen. Hearing her words, many people also looked puzzled. Meng Churen was very intimate with Luo Yu. Why is Luo Yu only ranked 4th? Meng Churen's grandfather, Meng Zhen, also questioned. It seems that Elder Meng has some relationship with Luo Yu, some people guessed. Elder Meng, although Luo Yu is your disciple, you can't be so biased. Heavenly Love smiled faintly. What, I see. Many people suddenly understood. Luo Yu was a disciple that Meng Zhen had secretly nurtured, and later became a spy in the aristocratic family camp. The reason why Meng Churen and Luo Yu were so close was precisely because they had cultivated together since they were young. Naturally, their relationship was not ordinary. In this way, everyone thought it through. Luo Yu had been a spy in the aristocratic family for a long time. Even if he did not contribute much, he still worked hard. With his strength and contributions, he could even compete for the position of Jinkui. But now, not only did he not keep his position as Sword 2, but he also fell 2 places and became Sword 4. This was something that Meng Zhen and Meng Churen did not expect. Chapter 1109. Not to mention the others, even Luo Yu himself frowned slightly. He did not expect that he would be arranged in such a way that his ranking would drop instead of rising. Not only had he been hiding in the aristocratic families for a long time, but he had also brought out many secrets. In the sacred dynasty's treasure, he had even killed a few sword sons from the aristocratic families. With such contributions, coupled with his own strength and status, he was even qualified to fight for the position of Jinkui, let alone keep his position as Sword 2. But now, he had to settle for 4th place. This is unfair to brother Luo Yu. Meng Churen frowned and could not help but shout. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, your arrangement. Meng Zhen frowned and seemed to want to say something. This is according to the rules of the Battle of the Sword Sons. There is no favoritism, Yi Tianqing said. Hearing Yi Tianqing's words, everyone, including the hundreds of overlords, nodded slightly. Yi Tianqing's character, needless to say, was obvious to all. Otherwise, these overlords would not have stayed in the Sword Dynasty so loyally. Alright, then this old man will see who exactly the first 3 people are. They are actually more outstanding than my disciple. Meng Zhen stepped back in the end. However, from his tone, it was clear that there was some dissatisfaction. Meng Churen was the same. She muttered, I want to see who the 3 are more outstanding than brother Luo Yu. Meng Churen had cultivated with Luo Yu since they were young, so she admired Luo Yu. In her opinion, Luo Yu was the most outstanding man in the world. Yi Tianqing ignored Meng Zhen and the rest and continued, the successor of Sword 3, Xuanlian. Hearing Xuanlian's name, the crowd did not comment much. Xuanlian was already famous in the Sword Dynasty. Before Yi Guqin came to Sacred Cliff College, the entire younger generation of Sacred Cliff College relied on Xuanlian. Xuanlian was 4th on the sword leaderboard. Excluding Huang Qianqiu, he was actually 3rd on the sword leaderboard. Even Luo Yu, who was once Sword 2, could not guarantee that he could defeat Xuanlian. Therefore, Luo Yu did not say anything. As for Meng Zhen, he snorted and said, my disciple is no weaker than the Xuanlian. Although he said so, he did not say that Luo Yu was stronger than Xuanlian. This Xuanlian's strength is barely on par with brother Luo Yu's. Meng Churen snorted. Next, it was time to announce the successor of Jian Tu. Many people's gazes shifted back and forth between Jian Jinghong and Yi Guqin. If nothing unexpected happens, the position of Sword Chief should belong to Jian Jinghong. I think so too. After all, Jian Jinghong is Vice Alliance Master Yi's disciple. It's a pity for Dugu Wubai. His divine dwellings have been destroyed. Even if he is forced to take the position of Sword 2, I'm afraid it will still attract a lot of criticism, some warriors whispered to each other. However, in the end, Yi Tianqing's words caused everyone to be stunned. The successor of Sword 2, Jian Jinghong. What? Did I hear wrong? Jian Jinghong? It's really Jian Jinghong. He's only ranked 2nd. Could the 1st place be? No, it shouldn't be. Yi Tianqing's words were like a pot of boiling water. Not only was Jian Jinghong's strength extraordinary, but he also possessed the creation sword essence and was Yi Tianqing's disciple. Logically speaking, he should be worthy of being Jinkui's successor. As for Yi Guqin, before his divine dwellings had been destroyed, he might have been able to compete with Jian Jinghong for the position of Jinkui. But now, there was almost no possibility. However, the result was so unexpected. Jian Jinghong shrugged and did not hold any grudges in his heart. Jian Jinghong is not bad, but I'm curious. Who will take the position of Jinkui? Meng Zhen said. In his imagination, the Jinkui's successor should be either Jian Jinghong or Luo Yu. However, the 2 of them actually failed to obtain it. As for Yi Guqin, Meng Zhen had already excluded him from the list of candidates for Jinkui. I also want to see who took brother Luo Yu's position as Jinkui's successor. Meng Churen crossed her arms in front of her chest. Her words made it seem as if the Jinkui's successor had long been Luo Yu's. Next, we will announce Jian Yi, who is also the Jiankui's successor. Yi Tianqing's tone became slightly more solemn. After all, the position of Jiankui was equivalent to that of a country's crown prince. It was definitely not ordinary. Many eyes fell on Yiguchen. They wanted to know if Yi Tianqing had the courage to push a cripple with a broken divine dwelling to the throne of Jiankui. The gazes of the surrounding people were filled with pity, indifference, and all sorts of emotions, and so on. Yiguchen directly ignored them. The broken divine dwelling was only temporary. If there was an opportunity, he would metamorphose into a more powerful flawless divine dwelling. The Jiankui's successor is, Dugu Wubai. Yi Tianqing's words were sonorous. The atmosphere was silent for a moment, then it boiled and exploded like a pot of oil in water. I didn't expect it to be Dugu Wubai. This is really unexpected. But is it really appropriate to nominate someone with a broken divine dwelling? I really admire Dugu Wubai, but this is not the reason why he can ascend to the position of Jiankui. Discussions broke out instantly, and most of the comments were extremely unfavorable to Yiguchen. The reason was simple. It was because of his strength. Yiguchen was still the original natural saint, so no one said anything. But Yiguchen's divine dwelling had been broken by Huang Qinqiu. This had a huge impact. The Sword Dynasty was still the #1 dynasty in the 100 Great Dynasties. If a cripple ascended to the position of Jiankui, it would undoubtedly attract a lot of criticism. Deputy Alliance Leader, is this your decision? Meng Zhen asked. He could accept it if Jian Jinghong was the Jiankui because Luo Yu was indeed slightly weaker than Jian Jinghong. But if his disciple could not even compare to a cripple with a broken divine dwelling, he would be furious. Meng Churen also felt that it was unfair for Luo Yu. She walked to Yiguchen, sized him up, and said, Dugu Wubai, I have indeed heard of your name. I also know that your talent and strength were not weak in the past. You were even known as a natural saint. But the past is the past. One can't always remember the glory of the past, right? Your divine dwelling has been broken by Huang Qinqiu, and you can no longer improve. Instead of forcing yourself to take the position of Jiankui and humiliating yourself, why don't you abdicate? That way, you can still have an ordinary and stable life. Meng Churen's voice was very calm, and she did not deliberately show any disdain. However, that judgmental tone made people feel extremely uncomfortable listening to it. Mu Xingzu's eyes widened, and she shouted, Meng Churen, how dare you be impudent to my master? Ling Mo Shu also frowned. He took a step forward and said coldly, watch your tone when speaking to Brother Dugu. The two of them took a step forward at the same time, and their aura forced Meng Churen to take a few steps back. Her face was slightly pale, but she immediately said firmly, what, did I say something wrong? Isn't it natural for the weak to abdicate and the strong to succeed? Meng Churen still felt that her words were the most reasonable. Yiguchen revealed a cold look when he heard that. He took a step forward and looked at Meng Churen with a pair of bottomless black eyes. Who gave you the right to judge my future? Chapter 11:10. Yiguchen's words were indifferent and did not reveal the slightest bit of aura. But those deep, cold eyes made Meng Churen's heart tremble for no reason. It was as if she was facing endless darkness and fear. Her legs gave way, and she sat on the ground with a thud. Luo Yu saw this and walked over to help Meng Churen up. Churen, are you all right? Meng Churen's beautiful face was flushed with embarrassment and anger. Her grandfather was a false saint expert. She herself was also a proud daughter of Goddess Academy whose reputation wasn't weak. That was why Meng Churen had developed a somewhat egotistical personality. At this moment, she was suppressed by Yiguchen's aura and slumped to the ground in public. This was very embarrassing for Meng Churen. Dugu Wubai, I've heard of your deeds and admire you, but isn't it a little inappropriate to treat a girl like this? Luo Yu frowned. His attitude toward Yiguchen was not too excessive. But as childhood sweethearts, he naturally sided with Meng Churen. Was it me or her who started it first? Yi Guqin said indifferently. These words made Meng Churen's expression turn ugly again. She said angrily, Dugu Wubai, I used to admire you, but today I realize that you're just a greedy, vile person. Meng Churen's words determined that Yi Guqin was a vile person who coveted Jian Kuei's position. Ha! Yi Guqin shook his head and said nothing. If it weren't for the prodigy battlefield, Yi Guqin wouldn't have been interested in Jian Kuei's position. Leader Yi, shouldn't we change the candidate for Jian Kuei? Meng Zhen walked out with a sullen face. Seeing his granddaughter lying on the ground and his disciple occupying Sword 4's position, he was naturally very unhappy. What made Meng Zhen even more unhappy was that the person who took away his disciple's position as Jian Kuei was a cripple with a broken spiritual abode. Even though he had created many legends and was even titled as a natural-born saint. But as Meng Churen said, the past was the past. Yi Guqin had lost his value. I am following the rules of the Sword Sun battle. Why do I have to change? Heaven Sentiment asked. Meng Zhen coldly snorted and said, the reason is very simple. How will the other dynasties view our Sword dynasty if we let a cripple with a destroyed spiritual abode take up the position of Jian Kuei? Will this move convince the prodigies? He looked at the prodigies present and said loudly, are you willing to let a cripple take the most glorious position of Jian Kuei? None of the geniuses present said anything after hearing this. However, the eyes of most of the sky prides flickered slightly. Obviously, they were not too willing to let Yi Guqin take on the role of Jian Kuei. Have you all forgotten the miracle created by senior brother Dugu? Also, senior brother Dugu killed Hua Wuxiu single-handedly in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. The disciples of Sacred Cliff College roared with righteous indignation. So what? Brother Luo Yu also killed a few sword sons of the aristocratic families. Aren't his achievements greater than Dugu Wubai's? Meng Churen said disdainfully. You. Hearing Meng Churen's sarcastic words, the disciples of Sacred Cliff College were fuming with anger. Indeed, Alliance Leader Yi, in terms of strength, Dugu Wubai is no match for Luo Yu now. In terms of achievements, Luo Yu has not only been lurking in the aristocratic family's camp for a long time, but he has also killed a few sword sons of the aristocratic families. Compared to Luo Yu's achievements, Dugu Wubai's achievement of killing Hua Wuxiu is nothing, Meng Zhen said calmly. Upon hearing Meng Zhen's words, many voices of agreement rang out from the crowd. Yes, Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, please reconsider. A few pseudo-saints also spoke up. They were all pseudo-saints who were on good terms with Meng Zhen. Yi Tianqing frowned tightly. Yi Guqin looked coldly at this group of people. In terms of strength, Yi Guqin would definitely transform into a spiritual abode. Dugu's clone alone would grow to a terrifying level in no time, and he would definitely be able to leave Luo Yu far behind. In terms of achievements, Yi Guqin had not only killed Hua Wuxiu. Without him, Su Qingyu would not have appeared, let alone killed a pseudo-saint from an aristocratic family. Without his God-Devourer sword, Yi Tianqing would not have been able to kill Hun Hui Yen, let alone survive and obtain the sacred Dao fruit. Such a feat was enough to leave Luo Yu's meager achievements in the dust. However, these achievements could not be made public now. Yi Tianqing's eyes flashed, and then she said, enough, rules are rules, and in terms of achievements, Dugu Wubai's achievements are greater than anyone else's. Oh, what achievements does he have? Meng Zhen was so angry that he laughed. It's not convenient to say for the time being, but what I can say is that the 4 sacred Dao fruits that our Sword Dynasty obtained were actually all thanks to Dugu Wubai, Yi Tianqing said. Ha, Deputy Alliance Leader Yi is trying to push Dugu Wubai to the top. Who would believe such words? Meng Zhen sneered. There was also a burst of discussion around the Sword Emperor Hall. Not many people believed Yi Tianqing's words. Seeing Yi Tianqing's resolute attitude, Meng Zhen had no more scruples and said directly, I'll be frank. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, why don't you choose another candidate for Jian Kuei, or I'll withdraw from the Sword Dao Alliance. As soon as his words fell, the noise came to an abrupt end. Everyone's eyes widened. Proposing to withdraw from the Sword Dao Alliance at this time was definitely a threat. Elder Meng, what do you mean? Yi Tianqing's expression also froze. That's what I mean. What do you guys think? Meng Zhen looked at the other three pseudo-saints. The three pseudo-saints were on good terms with Meng Zhen and were considered to be in the same group. We'll advance and retreat with Brother Meng, the three pseudo-saints said. His words caused an uproar. In other words, if Yi Tianqing insisted on letting Yi Guqin take the position of Jiankui, the four pseudo-saints, including Meng Zhen, would withdraw from the Sword Dao Alliance. Now, there were only a dozen pseudo-saints in the entire Sword Dao Alliance. It was conceivable that Meng Zhen's actions would have a huge impact. Elder Meng, are you threatening us? Yi Tianqing's expression had already turned cold. It's not a threat. I'm thinking for the Sword Dynasty, so that the Sword Dynasty won't be ridiculed by the other dynasties, Meng Zhen said righteously. He made it sound good. But in fact, he was acting selfishly and wanted to push his disciple Luo Yu to take the position of Jiankui. Feeling the sudden tension in the atmosphere, the crowd also quieted down. No one thought that the position of Jiankui would cause such a situation. Elder Meng's words are not unreasonable. Besides, the Sword Dynasty can't lose four pseudo-saints. The other pseudo-saints transmitted their voices to Yi Tianqing. Only Confuzi and Wu Hongyan had a sullen expression. Seeing this scene, the anger on Meng Churen's face dissipated and was replaced by a wisp of calm pride. With Meng Zhen's support, Meng Churen naturally had confidence again. She looked at Yi Guqin and said in a strange voice, Dugu Wu Bai, if you had abdicated yourself, you would have been able to gain a good reputation. You wouldn't have ended up like this. You wouldn't have been forcefully removed from the position of sword leader. In Meng Churen's opinion, choosing between four pseudo-saints and a cripple with a broken divine dwelling. As long as Yi Tianqing wasn't stupid, she would definitely choose to listen to Meng Zhen's opinion and remove Yi Guqin from the position of Jiankui. Not only her, but most of the people present also thought so. Now that the Sword Dynasty was in a precarious situation and a great disaster was imminent, four pseudo-saints were absolutely indispensable. Yi Tianqing's expression didn't change much from beginning to end. He looked around and said calmly, don't worry. Since Elder Meng wants to leave the Sword Dao Alliance, then leave, I won't keep you. Chapter 11:11. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi is wise, Meng Zhen subconsciously smiled and cupped his hands at Yi Tianqing. A moment later, the smile on his face suddenly froze. He looked at Yi Tianqing in a daze, as if he thought he had heard wrongly. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, what did you say? Didn't you hear me clearly? Yi Tianqing's tone also became cold. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, for that kid, you actually. Elder Meng's old face suddenly became extremely gloomy. He was not the only one. Everyone present looked at Yi Tianqing with an extremely incredulous expression. Yi Tianqing was actually willing to give up Meng Zhen and the other three pseudo-saint experts for Yi Guqin. Meng Churen, who had a smug look on her face a moment ago, suddenly froze. At this moment, his entire face seemed to be frozen, which made him look rather comical. She also thought that she had heard wrongly. Meng Zhen's old face twitched slightly. He naturally did not really want to leave the Sword Dao Alliance. After all, if he left the alliance at this juncture, where would he put his face? He would probably be labeled as a coward and be criticized by all the people of the Sword Dynasty. Moreover, if he left the alliance, he would not even have a chance to get the fruit of the Sage Dao. However, since he had already said that, he would lose face if he did not leave. It could be said that Yi Tianqing's decision immediately made Meng Zhen look like a pig in the mirror. Why did Deputy Alliance Leader Yi make such a decision? I don't know, but this time, the Sword Dao Alliance might lose four pseudo-saint experts. It's really one disaster after another. Many people present were sighing. Deputy Alliance Leader Yi, are you really going to make such a choice? The 5 aristocratic families are about to take revenge. Can the Sword Dao Alliance bear such a loss? Meng Zhen said in a deep voice. This is not a reason for you to threaten me. This is my choice. Yi Tianqing flicked her sleeve and completely made up her mind. Meng Zhen's old face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Yi Guqin also sighed slightly. There were very few people who could make him admire, but Yi Tianqing was definitely one of them. In such a dangerous situation, Yi Tianqing still insisted on her principles. She did not hesitate to offend the 4 pseudo-saint experts to fulfill her promise and protect Yi Guqin's position. This kind of boldness and courage was not something that everyone possessed. Alright, since Vice Alliance Master Yi is so insistent, this old man won't be thick-skinned and stay any longer. I only hope that when the 5 great families come knocking on our door, Vice Alliance Master Yi won't come begging us again. Meng Zhen said furiously. He and his 3 friends left the alliance. That meant there were only 8 pseudo-saint level experts left in the Sword Dao Alliance. This number was absolutely inferior to the more than 20 false saints of the 5 aristocratic families. Yi Tianqing's alliance was Yi's alliance leaders. Before Yi Tianqing could say anything, Yi Guqin said coldly. Humph, ignorant child. Meng Zhen snorted coldly when he heard Yi Guqin's words. Yi Zhenyi said, leader, se. In their opinion, Yi Guqin did not understand the seriousness of the matter at all. However, they did not know that Yi Guqin still had a backup plan, which was Ling Qianhen. As long as Ling Qianhen could use the fruit of the Sage Dao to become a heavenly tribulation saint. Then, even if all the pseudo-saint level experts left, the Sword Dynasty would be able to survive, let alone Meng Zhen and the other 3. The strength of a saint was far from what a pseudo-saint level expert could compare to. Of course, Yi Guqin did not say that he had the ability to invite Ling Qianhen. Because this was a secret move. If it was leaked in advance, the 5 aristocratic families would definitely be vigilant. Yi Tianqing's firm attitude could not be changed. Meng Zhen could only lead the other 3 pseudo-saint level experts to leave the Sword Dao Alliance. However, he still did not leave and looked on coldly. Meng Churen's face was also very ugly. She did not expect Yi Tianqing to make such a choice. Churen, forget it. It's not like I have to get the position of Jiankui, Luo Yu said. He was indeed a little disappointed that he did not get the position of Jiankui. However, that was Yi Tianqing's decision, and Luo Yu could not say anything. He did have some objections to Yi Guqin taking the position of Jiankui, but he did not say it out loud. Brother Luo Yu, Churen really feels wronged for you. Meng Churen bit her lip. It was as if it was a great injustice that Luo Yu did not get the position of Jiankui. And Yi Guqin getting the position of Jiankui was not worthy of it. The position of the Sword's Son had been settled, and the next step was the conferring ceremony. As everyone knew, the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty had to wear masks to cover their faces and hide their names. They were referred to as Jian Shisan to the outside world. A group of etiquette officers took out 13 masks. 12 of them were silver in color. Only Jiankui's mask was dazzling gold. All the prodigies who received the title of Sword Sons stepped forward one by one and put on their masks. From the moment they put on their masks, they were given a new title. When it was Yi Guqin's turn, he looked at the golden mask but did not reach out his hand. Everyone was puzzled when they saw this. What's wrong? Why isn't Dugu Wubai wearing the Sword Sun mask? Could it be that he's scared and knows that he's not worthy of the position of Jiankui? When Meng Churen saw this, she snorted and said, he's finally enlightened. Does he know that he's not worthy of the position? Yi Tianqing also frowned slightly. She did not know why Yi Guqin did not take the Sword Sun mask. Yi Guqin's expression was normal. He flipped his hand and took out a ghost mask. The ghost mask was clumsy and looked like a child's toy. It looked like it was crying and laughing at the same time. Yi Guqin took the ghost mask and slowly put it on his face. Yi Guqin was dressed in a black robe. His black hair fluttered in the wind. He wore the ghost mask on his face. For a moment, a murderous aura spread out, causing everyone to shiver. That's Jian Shisan's mask. Jian Jinghong, Su Zihao, and the others sighed inwardly when they saw this. There was an uproar in the crowd. I, Dugu Wubai, will wear this ghost mask to witness the destruction of the Hua family. Yi Guqin's cold voice came from under the mask. He did not have a special relationship with Jian Shisan. However, Yi Guqin was slightly moved by Jian Shisan's protectiveness toward his sister. Therefore, he had already decided to wear the ghost mask and ascend to the position of Jian Kuei to witness the destruction of the Hua family. Yi Tianqing and the others did not say anything when they saw this. The Sword Master mask was just a symbol. Any mask was fine. After the 13 prodigies put on the masks, the entire Sword Master conferring ceremony came to an end. However, most of the prodigies present looked at Yi Guqin with twinkling eyes. Many people were actually not too willing for Yi Guqin to assume the position of Jian Kuei. Even among the 100 overlords, most of the overlords did not agree with Yi Tianqing's way of doing things. They felt that she was too impulsive. However, the outcome was already decided. They could not change it. Yi Tianqing frowned slightly when she saw the expressions on everyone's faces. At this moment, Yi Guqin, who was on the stage, suddenly spoke. Here, I have another thing to announce. Everyone looked at Yi Guqin. They did not know what medicine he was selling. Following that, Yi Guqin's light sentence set off stormy waves in everyone's hearts. They were tongue-tied. If there is a suitable opportunity, I will enter the skyless sword realm to explore. Chapter 11-12. Yi Guqin's words were like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. Skyless sword realm, what kind of place was that? Although it was one of the 4 great mystic realms of the Sword Dao Alliance along with Mount Saint Crossing, the Sword Tomb, and the Ancient Sword Tomb. But the degree of danger was far from what the other 3 mystic realms could compare to. Even a pseudo-saint expert like the proud divine continent was trapped inside. It could be seen how dangerous the skyless sword realm was. Among the 4 great mystic realms, the skyless sword realm was definitely the one with the fewest people entering, and also the most frightening mystic realm. I didn't hear wrongly, right? Dugu Wubai actually wants to explore the skyless sword realm? Is this possible? Even in his peak state, exploring the skyless sword realm is extremely dangerous, not to mention now that his divine abode is crippled. Hearing Yi Guqin's words, the entire audience was in an uproar. Although everyone did not quite dare to believe it. But since Yi Guqin announced it in public on such an occasion, it naturally could not be false. If it was a lie, there was no need for him to shoot himself in the foot. Master. Mu Xingzu's bright eyes revealed a worried look. She also knew how dangerous the skyless sword realm was. Jian Jinghong sighed deeply. In fact, he was the same as Yi Guqin, entering the skyless sword realm. After all, the 2 of them were both 9th-generation sword sect cultivators. Oh, really want to enter the skyless sword realm to explore? Meng Churen's eyes revealed a doubtful look. She really did not believe that Yi Guqin had the guts to enter the skyless sword realm. Oh, is he courting death? Meng Zhen shook his head and sneered. Yi Guqin gave him face in public, so he naturally would not give Yi Guqin any face. On the contrary, Yi Tianqing glanced at Yi Guqin, and the corners of his mouth revealed a hint of a smile. He naturally understood the purpose of Yi Guqin saying this at this time. It was to quell everyone's criticism of him. Yi Guqin himself did not care about criticism, but he could not put Yi Tianqing in a difficult position. As expected, when Yi Guqin mentioned that he was going to enter the heavenless sword realm, those prodigies who were unhappy with Yi Guqin's identity as Jian Kuei suppressed their dissatisfaction. At the very least, they admired Yi Guqin's courage. Since that's the case, I will personally lead Jian Kuei and Jian Er into the skyless sword realm in a month's time, Heavenly Sentiment said. Jian Kuei and Jian Er were naturally referring to Yi Guqin and Jian Jinghong. Even Heaven Sentiment had spoken. This time, it was definitely true. Even Meng Churen couldn't question him anymore. However, she muttered, if Dugu Wubai falls in the skyless sword realm, then the position of Jiankui will still belong to brother Luoyu. The sword sun conferring ceremony came to an end under such circumstances. No one would have thought that a conferring ceremony would cause such a huge uproar. Meng Zhen and the other 3 pseudo-saints withdrew from the Sword Dao Alliance. This was definitely a major event that would spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. Yiguqin and Jian Jinghong's exploration of the skyless sword realm would also cause a huge discussion. After the conferring ceremony, Heaven Sentiment called out to Yiguqin. Senior Heaven Sentiment, is there anything else? Yiguqin asked. Actually, there's another piece of news that I didn't announce in public because I was afraid of causing panic, Heaven Sentiment said. Is it about the 5 aristocratic families? Yiguqin asked. Indeed, there are spies who have investigated the movements of the 5 aristocratic families. They seem to be in contact with the War God Dynasty, Molo Dynasty, and Tyrannical Saber Dynasty, Heaven Sentiment said. Could it be that they want to unite some experts from the 3 dynasties and invade the Sword Dynasty together? Yiguqin also frowned deeply. That should be it. I still underestimated their madness. Heaven Sentiment sighed deeply, and a trace of exhaustion appeared in her eyes as she said, I'm only telling you so that you can be mentally prepared. Yiguqin pondered for a moment, and then said, Senior Heaven Sentiment, don't worry. I will do my best to find traces of Alliance Master Proud Divine Continent in the skyless sword realm. I won't force you. Your life is more important, Heaven Sentiment said. She did not pressure Yiguqin. However, Yiguqin himself had made up his mind that he would not easily give up on finding traces of Proud Divine Continent. After that, Yiguqin did not return to Sacred Cliff College. Instead, he stayed in Sword Emperor City and began to adjust his breathing and meditate, preparing for the trip to the skyless sword realm in a month. Unsurprisingly, the news of the Sword Sun conferring ceremony had spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. Most people were somewhat dissatisfied with Heaven Sentiment's actions. In their view, at such a critical juncture in the Sword Dynasty, the importance of Meng Zhen and the other 3 false saints was far greater than that of Yiguqin. I really don't know why Deputy Alliance Master Heaven Sentiment suddenly became so muddle-headed. Yeah, she can't tell the priorities. Letting Dugu Wubai be Jiankui not only angered Meng Zhen and the others, but also made our Sword Dynasty unable to raise our heads in the battlefield of Heaven's Prides. That's right. When the time comes to participate in the battlefield of Heaven's Prides, the entire South Horizon region will know that our Sword Dynasty's leader, Jiankui, is a cripple with a broken divine palace. Such opinions and discussions were heard everywhere in the Sword Dynasty. The human heart was like this. When Yiguqin was glorious, everyone's face was full of awe. But when Yiguqin's halo was gone, that awe immediately turned into disdain. Only a small number of people believed that Yiguqin had the ability to return to the peak. Yiguqin also did not go out. He had been in seclusion, waiting for the arrival of the Skyless Sword Realm in a month. The Skyless Sword Realm was perhaps the greatest opportunity for Yiguqin's divine palace to transform. The Maluo dynasty, as the 3rd dynasty of the 100 Great Dynasties, was also quite famous in the South Horizon region. This was a country of death without mercy and mercy, a dynasty of killing. There was no morality or law to speak of. The strong could enjoy everything. The weak even found it difficult to survive. Therefore, the warriors of the Maluo dynasty were mostly cold-blooded and bloodthirsty. And the blood-ranking Heaven's Prides of the Maluo dynasty were not good people either. In the past battlefield of Heaven's Prides, the Maluo dynasty's prides were the most feared by other Heaven's Prides. At the border of the Maluo dynasty, outside a small city, a black-robed figure walked over. The wind blew his long white hair, making him look bleak and cold. On a cold and evil handsome face, the dark golden right eye looked deep and mysterious. This figure was Yiguqin's doppelganger, Dugu Chuma, who came from the Sword Dynasty to the Maluo Dynasty. At this moment, if one probed his aura, one would find that Dugu Chuma's cultivation had reached the Divine Soul 9 transformations. In less than 10 days, Duguchyoma's cultivation had jumped 4 major realms, 36 minor realms, from the first level of the body refining realm all the way to the divine soul 9 transformations. This speed was simply appalling and terrifying to the extreme. Although the doppelganger's cultivation speed would be affected by the strength of the original body, this speed was indeed abnormally fast. Of course, the one with the greatest impact was the innate purple chi. The innate purple chi was known as a cultivation accelerator, and its effect was not that simple. In addition, Duguchyoma's physique had the ability to devour, so his cultivation speed was naturally very fast. I've finally reached the Maluo dynasty. If I want to break through quickly, I have to kill and devour more flesh and blood essence. Let's start the slaughter in this small city. Duguchyoma's eyes were cold and bloodthirsty. Everyone in the Maluo dynasty was a sinner, so he could kill without restraint. Chapter 11-13. Black Dirt City was an ordinary city at the border of the Mola dynasty. Duguchyoma stepped into the small city and looked around. The streets of the city were bleak and desolate. There were only houses and buildings made of black stones on the sides of the streets. There were barely any shops or storefronts. However, if one thought about it carefully, one would not dare to open a shop in the Mola dynasty without enough background and strength. On both sides of the street, there were cold and obscure gazes staring at Duguchyoma from time to time. Hee, another newcomer. His aura is not bad, but I wonder how strong he is. There are 2 types of people who come to the Mola dynasty. One is the proud sons of the great factions who come to train, and the other is the evil madmen who lick blood on the edge of their blades. That young man should be the former, right? So what if that young man has an extraordinary background? A place like the Mola dynasty doesn't care about one's background. Whispers could be heard from all around the street. Duguchyoma's face was cold. At this moment, the sobbing of a young girl suddenly came from not far ahead of the road. Duguchyoma looked over indifferently and saw a young girl in coarse clothes lying on the side of the road crying loudly on the body of a woman. Although the young girl's clothes were coarse, her face was pure and beautiful. At this moment, her eyes were red from crying, and she looked very pitiful. It was obvious that the dead woman was the young girl's mother. There were a few fierce-looking men around the young girl who seemed to want to do something to her. If this scene happened in the Sword Dynasty or any other dynasty, it would definitely attract a group of people to help. However, in the Mola dynasty, such a thing would not happen at all. The surrounding people all looked at this scene with cold indifference. There was even a hint of amusement in their eyes. However, this amusement did not fall on the young girl, but on Duguchyoma. They were very curious if this young man who had just come to the Mola dynasty was like the other proud sons of heaven who had come to train in the Mola dynasty, full of righteousness and compassion. Duguchyoma walked toward the young girl expressionlessly. He is indeed a hothead. Seeing Dugu walking towards the girl like a demon, the crowd sneered. Young master. The young girl bit her lips as she watched Duguchyoma walk over. Her eyes were hazy with tears. It was as if a sliver of hope had appeared in the midst of despair. Brat, this is the Molo dynasty. I advise you to mind your own business. A man revealed a ferocious look as his aura spread out. It was an expert in the 9 transformations of the divine soul. The other men were the same. Young master, please save me. They killed my mother and forced me. The young girl's innocent face was filled with tears. Duguchyoma walked in front of the girl, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. Just when he was less than 3 feet away from the young girl suddenly stopped. A cold and vicious light suddenly flashed through the girl's teary eyes. With a flip of her wrist, she immediately grasped a dagger dipped in poison. With lightning speed, she skillfully stabbed the dagger into Duguchyoma's left chest. That was the heart of an ordinary person. Traces of tears remained on the girl's face, but her expression was incomparably vicious. Foolish brat, remember in your next life, never come to the Molo dynasty. The girl's smug expression was cold and sinister. The vicious men around also sneered. Sigh, another unlucky bastard died at the hands of Black Butterfly. TSK, she's Madame Black Scorpion's disciple. Last time, a spirit bridge of heaven and earth prodigy from a top dynasty had his heart pierced by Black Butterfly and died with hatred. Seeing this scene, the crowd whispered to each other. However, they didn't feel anything. After all, death was normal in the Molo dynasty. However, in the next moment, including those who were watching the show and Black Butterfly's group, their expressions were all stunned. Duguchyo Mo didn't cry out in pain, nor did he have any reaction. He just looked at Black Butterfly indifferently, and his body didn't even move. Black Butterfly's beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief as she looked at Duguchyo Mo's left chest. Her dagger stabbed into Duguchyo Mo's body, but not a drop of blood flowed out. Only wisps of black demonic energy leaked out. How is this possible? This dagger is coated with bone-corroding poison. Black Butterfly was a little incoherent. Previously, she had used this method to plot against many prodigies who came to the Molo dynasty to train. It was the same every time. In just a few breaths, those prodigies would fall to the ground and die in endless pain. However, Duguchyo Mo didn't seem to feel pain. Nor did he show any signs of being poisoned. This was actually all thanks to Duguchyo Mo's special constitution. The pure demonic body coupled with the battle god demonic body allowed him to block out pain and be immune to most poisons. Do you take me for a fool? Duguchyo Mo's tone was extremely cold. For a girl like her to be able to survive in such a cruel environment for so long was very abnormal. You saw through it long ago. Black Butterfly's voice trembled. What do you think? Duguchyo Mo's lips curled into a smile. However, that smile was very cold. Then why don't you dodge? Looking at the evil young man in front of her who couldn't be stabbed or poisoned to death, Black Butterfly felt a sense of fear in her heart. Is it necessary? As soon as Duguchyo Mo's voice fell, he directly grabbed Black Butterfly's face with one hand. He didn't dodge, not because he couldn't, but because there was no need to. Black Butterfly's entire face was almost grasped in Duguchyo Mo's hand. Duguchyo Mo raised his arm, and Black Butterfly's petite body was suspended in the air. Spare me, I'm the disciple of Madame Black Scorpion. Black Butterfly's entire face was covered by Duguchyo Mo's palm, so she could only mutter. Madame Black Scorpion was not only a heaven and earth spirit bridge expert, but also ranked in the blood ranking. Duguchyo Mo didn't speak, and his palm exerted force. Puff! Black Butterfly's head exploded, and her pure and beautiful face was torn apart in an instant, with brain matter splattering everywhere. Duguchyo Mo's expression didn't change at all after he crushed a young girl to death. On the surface of his body, black demonic runes vaguely appeared. Duguchyo Mo absorbed wisps of blood chi, and his aura became stronger. The wound on his left chest was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Damn it! The surrounding ferocious men were furious, and surrounded Duguchyo Mo. Duguchyo Mo's face was cold, and the dark golden soul-devouring demon eye stared at one of the men. That man's body suddenly stopped, and then there was a loud bang. His head exploded like a watermelon. Then, every time Duguchyo Mo looked at someone, that person's head would explode. The scene was shocking and horrifying. Everyone in the surrounding area was dumbfounded, their bodies trembling. What kind of terrifying ability was this? Whoever he stared at would die. Even these villains who were used to killing and death couldn't help but tremble in their hearts at this moment, as if they had seen the Grim Reaper. In fact, this was one of the abilities of the soul-devouring demon eye that Duguchyo Mo had discovered. With the power of the soul-devouring demon eye, it caused the soul power in the enemy's brain to explode, causing their head to explode. Of course, this ability was only effective against people whose cultivation was low, or people whose souls were weak. If they were at the same cultivation level, or if they had a spiritual object protecting their sea of consciousness, then this move would be very difficult to use. Of course, as Duguchyomo's cultivation increased, this ability of the soul-devouring demon I would also increase. After all, it was the talent of the soul-devouring royal family. How could it be so simple? In a short moment, Duguchyomo was surrounded by a circle of corpses. And he didn't even move much. At this moment, a charming voice suddenly sounded. You dare to kill my disciple, little brother, you're very brave. Chapter 11:14. A beautiful woman in a black robe appeared along with the coquettish voice. She was wearing a tight black robe that wrapped around her voluptuous and mature body. Her face was enchanting and her lips were purple. She looked extremely seductive. Madame Black Scorpion was ranked 98th on the blood ranking of the Molo dynasty. Although it was a low ranking, Madame Black Scorpion was extremely infamous at the borders of the dynasty. Many geniuses from other dynasties who came to the Molo dynasty to train were killed by her. At this moment, looking at the corpses on the ground, Madame Black Scorpion became vigilant. She couldn't see through Duguchyomo's cultivation, but her initial judgment was that it shouldn't be higher than hers. That was why Madame Black Scorpion dared to appear. As Madame Black Scorpion appeared, some of the surrounding people secretly swallowed their saliva. Just like her name, Madame Black Scorpion was a femme fatale. There were even rumors that she had learned the Six Desire Demon Sect's sexual absorption technique. Those men who were captured by her would eventually be sucked dry and die a miserable death. The Six Desire Demon Sect was the sect that Pink Playboy belonged to. Of course, Madame Black Scorpion and Pink Playboy couldn't be compared. The gap between them on the blood ranking was too big. TSK, even Madame Black Scorpion has appeared. This kid is going to be unlucky. Yeah, Madame Black Scorpion is on the blood ranking. Although she's only ranked 98th, this kid can't handle her. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they all felt that the outcome was already decided. Duguchyomo looked at Madame Black Scorpion without any change in his expression. Looking at Duguchyomo's handsome and charming face, Madame Black Scorpion smiled charmingly and said, Fine, I'll treat you well after I catch you. Madame Black Scorpion stuck out her tongue and licked her lips, revealing a cold and vicious expression. She twisted her slender waist and flashed toward Duguchyomo. Duguchyomo focused his right eye and activated the soul-devouring demon eye ability. Immediately, Madame Black Scorpion felt her sea of consciousness become chaotic and set off waves as if it was about to explode. Ah! Madame Black Scorpion groaned in pain and her face turned pale. She felt as if her head was about to split open. Her aura immediately became unstable and fell by a lot. Duguchyomo frowned slightly and said, Looks like it still won't work. Madame Black Scorpion's head did not explode immediately. The reason was also very simple. Duguchyomo's current realm was only at the Divine Soul 9 transformations. It was not enough to cause Madame Black Scorpion's sea of consciousness to explode. However, Duguchyomo did not mind. He extended a hand and grasped at the void. Suddenly, billowing demonic chi spread out, and a terrifying fluctuation swept out. Yuan devouring explosion. The move that Duguchyomo used was exactly the move that Soul Extinguishing Flame had once used. After refining the Soul Source Crystal of the Soul Extinguishing Flame, he had also inherited all of the Soul Extinguishing Flame's martial arts abilities. Although the devouring energy explosion was not as terrifying as the 7 limits of devouring heaven and destroying earth, it was still a martial art of the soul-devouring clan. How could it be weak? With this move, Madame Black Scorpion was blasted back, coughing up blood from the corner of her mouth. How is this possible? Madame Black Scorpion exclaimed. She could determine that the youth in front of her had absolutely not stepped into the spirit bridge of heaven and earth stage. He hadn't even reached the life and death threshold yet. However, that power caused her to feel incomparably terrified. Duguchyomo didn't say anything else and attacked again. Evil Yuan puppet. A series of black shockwaves swept out. Madame Black Scorpion was blasted back again, spitting out blood from her mouth. She was scared out of her wits and turned to leave. You think you can leave? A bloodthirsty coldness flashed in Duguchuma's eyes. As a spirit bridge of heaven and earth expert, Madame Black Scorpion's essence chi could be considered vigorous. After killing her, Duguchuma should be able to break through to the life and death threshold. Dark Scorpion Venom Palm. Madame Black Scorpion gathered the genuine chi in her body and blasted out a palm strike. As the green poisonous gas churned, it condensed into a square palm print and blasted toward Duguchuma. Duguchuma clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and black demonic patterns appeared on the surface of his body. Battle God demonic body was displayed. A powerful force burst out from his body. Although the current Battle God demonic body was only at the first revolution and its power was temporarily inferior to Yiguchin's ancient god body, it was still considered top-notch compared to other body refining techniques. A punch blasted out, accompanied by an ear-piercing sonic boom, directly punching through the green palm print. Haha, you're indeed a rash boy. Madame Black Scorpion was delighted to see Duguchuma destroy the palm print with one punch, and a bitter sneer appeared on her face. The most powerful part of her move wasn't the power of the palm print itself, but the scorpion venom it carried. If infected with the scorpion venom, let alone a spirit bridge expert, even the heaven prides of the divine dwelling stage would be in danger. This was one of the reasons why Madame Black Scorpion was infamous. However, the next scene made the bitter sneer on Madame Black Scorpion's face abruptly freeze. Duguchuma, who was infected with the scorpion venom, didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. He didn't even frown. How is it possible that you're immune to such a strong poison? Madame Black Scorpion shook her head in disbelief. Her strongest means was poison. And Duguchuma's pure demon body was the least afraid of poison. The next moment, Duguchuma stomped his foot, and his figure flashed in front of Madame Black Scorpion. He grabbed her neck with one hand. Madame Black Scorpion's face immediately flushed red, and her voluptuous body twisted like a worm. She was almost suffocating. The faces of everyone present froze at the same time. Madame Black Scorpion, who was ranked 98th on the blood ranking list, wasn't even a match for Duguchuma. How is it possible? Who is this young man? Madame Black Scorpion couldn't even last 3 moves in his hands. It's too terrifying. This young man's heart is terrifyingly cruel, and his means are even more strange. Who the hell is he? The faces of the surrounding martial artists were filled with fear. The Mo Luo Empire was such a place. The weak would be mercilessly tortured and killed. And the strong would make everyone bow their heads in awe. Spare my life, I'm willing to do anything for my lord. Madame Black Scorpion struggled, trying to show a charming smile on her face. Oh. Duguchuma glanced at Madame Black Scorpion's voluptuous body with a wicked look in his eyes. Although he had merged with 1/3 of Yiguchin's sea of consciousness origin, his character was unruly like a demon. He wasn't like Yiguchin, who was indifferent to beauty. I'll serve my lord well and make you comfortable. Madame Black Scorpion said, twisting her body. It's a pity that your body is too dirty. In the entire Mo Luo Empire, only Princess Luo Ho can barely arouse my interest. Duguchuma sneered. Hearing this, the surrounding people's faces turned dull. Princess Luo Ho was ranked 2nd on the blood ranking, the princess of a top empire. Even the geniuses of the 6 major forces in the Mo Luo Empire couldn't reach her. And judging from the young man's tone, Princess Luo Ho could barely arouse his interest. No, spare my life. Madame Black Scorpion looked terrified. The next moment, a cracking sound was heard. Duguchuma directly crushed Madame Black Scorpion's neck. An expert ranked 98th on the blood ranking list of the Mo Luo Empire had fallen. Chapter 11:15. Looking at Madame Black Scorpion, who was crushed to death, the entire Black Dirt City fell into a dead silence. In this small border city, Madame Black Scorpion was already the strongest person they could meet. However, the strongest person in their eyes was crushed to death by that white-haired youth. This kind of shock was not small. Duguchilma activated the devouring power of the God Devourer sword in his body. Madame Black Scorpion's flesh, blood, essence, and spiritual energy were all refined and absorbed by Duguchilma. His aura also rose again, but it was still stuck at a bottleneck. Duguchilma searched Madame Black Scorpion's origin ring again. Most of them were useless to him. Only a blood potion caught his attention. Duguchilma opened the blood bottle. Inside was half a bottle of bright red liquid that was as hot as fire. What a rich blood energy! Duguchilma's eyes flashed. He drank a mouthful and immediately felt as if magma had entered his throat. Rich essence gushed out of his body, accompanied by a fiery tempering power. Duguchilma's bottleneck began to loosen. This made Duguchilma slightly surprised. With a flash, he directly grabbed a person on the street and asked, "What is this thing?" The man said tremblingly, This is Azura blood." Then, Duguchilma understood. In the Mola dynasty, the most popular currency was not sky crystals, but Azura blood. Azura blood not only contained rich blood energy, but also was very helpful for cultivation. It also contained a special tempering effect. As such, the Azura's blood was extremely helpful to Duguchilma's cultivation. Of course, Azura blood was also an absolutely precious resource. Even Madame Black Scorpion only had half a bottle. Where does Azura blood come from? Duguchilma asked coldly. There must be a place where such a special resource came from. In the Mola dynasty, there is a secret realm called Azura Bloody Road. All Azura blood is produced from the blood pool in Azura Bloody Road, the man said nervously. Azura blood path. Duguchilma's eyes narrowed slightly. If he wanted to break through the boundary even faster, Dugu needed to obtain even more Azura blood. Then, he looked at the man. With a puff, the man's head exploded, and red and white matter splattered everywhere. Almost everyone in the Moro dynasty was tainted by evil. Even these people had watched coldly from the sidelines when Dugu had been plotted against by the black butterfly. Duguchilma didn't have any misgivings towards these people. Ah! Run! Devil, this guy is a peerless devil. The surrounding crowd scattered like birds and beasts. But if Duguchilma wanted to kill someone, who could escape? Killing one is a sin, but killing 10,000 is a hero. The truth, good, and evil in this world have always been determined by the strong, so, I will use your blood to pave the way for me, Dugu, to seek the devil's Tao. Duguchilma raised his hand, and a ferocious devil sword covered in black crystals appeared in his hand. It was the God Devourer wrapped in black crystals. As Duguchilma's sword vibrated, streaks of black sword chi shot out in all directions. The slaughter didn't stop. 10,000 souls wailed. Not long after, Black Dirt City was set ablaze with smoke and fire. Duguchilma wore a black robe and held the God Devourer in his hand. His white hair fluttered in the wind. Against the backdrop of the ruins of blood and fire, Duguchilma woke up like a demon king, and Azura came out of seclusion. His killing intent was so dense that it made one shudder. After drinking half a bottle of Azura blood and absorbing the flesh and blood essence of everyone in the city, his cultivation had broken through to the threshold of life and death. Next city, continue, Duguchilma's slightly hoarse voice sounded, like the whisper of the Grim Reaper. In the following month, Duguchilma passed through 12 more cities. Duguchilma massacred every city, and the sky was filled with raging flames. In 1 month, 13 cities were massacred. Even in the Mola dynasty, where massacres were common, it was still extremely shocking. In a short time, the rumors of the white-haired sword demon had spread through almost half of the Mola dynasty. In the rumors, the young man had snow-white hair, a dark gold right eye, and a black crystal sword in his hand. He had massacred 13 cities without a single drop of blood on him. Wherever his gaze passed, the heads of those with lower cultivation bases would explode. Even those with higher cultivation bases would have a splitting headache, and their combat power would be greatly reduced. Moreover, Duguchyo Mo's battle record was not limited to massacring 13 cities. More than 10 prodigies on the blood ranking had died at the hands of Duguchyo Mo. Among them, the highest ranking had reached more than 40. One could imagine how great of an impact Duguchyo Mo had had in the Mola dynasty. In a palace of the Mola dynasty, Princess Luo Ho heard the news and muttered to herself, "The white-haired sword demon massacred 13 cities. Who is he?" Princess Luo Ho was puzzled. Although she was also ruthless and bloodthirsty, the white-haired sword demon was definitely more ruthless than her. Princess Luo Ho could not help but think of the lonesome star and the demon emperor's vision. Could the vision be related to the white-haired sword demon? But no matter what, Princess Luo Ho would never have guessed. The white-haired sword demon was Yi Guchen's clone, who had a conflict with her in the sacred dynasty's treasure. Duguchyo Mo's path of killing had not stopped. After killing more than 10 prodigies on the blood ranking, Duguchyo Mo had also obtained some Azura blood. In addition, he had refined the flesh and blood essence from massacring 13 cities. Duguchyo Mo's realm had risen to the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. In a month, he had risen from the body refining realm to the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. This was absolutely shocking news. On this day, Duguchyo Mo was approaching the 14th city. However, before he entered the city, a figure suddenly appeared. It was a woman in green. Her face was delicate, and her lips were painted with rouge. She did not have the slightest murderous aura and bloodthirsty aura that people of the Molo dynasty usually had. But in the face of such a woman, Duguchyo Mo's face did not change in the slightest. In the Molo dynasty, women, especially beautiful women, were often more dangerous than fierce men. Black Butterfly and Madame Black Scorpion were examples. Moreover, Duguchyo Mo could also sense the woman's cultivation. Divine Dwelling Stage. This was the first time Duguchyo Mo had encountered a Divine Dwelling Stage Heaven Pride in the Molo dynasty. I presume this gentleman is the white-haired sword demon that has been the talk of the town in the Molo dynasty recently. The woman in green looked at Duguchyo Mo, seemingly without hostility. Duguchyo Mo did not say anything and activated the power of the spirit-devouring demon eye. Suddenly, the woman in green's face turned pale, and her delicate body trembled slightly. Her beautiful eyes revealed a slight tremor as she looked at Duguchyo Mo. Rumors were rumors, and they would never be as profound as personal experience. The woman in green finally understood that Duguchyo Mo's terrifying eye technique, which could kill anyone he stared at, was not groundless. Oh, the spiritual object guarding the sea of knowledge? Duguchyo Mo tilted his head slightly, looking at the woman in green. Come here, Duguchyo Mo said calmly. Qing Qing's expression changed and she gritted her teeth slightly. She moved lightly and landed in front of Duguchyo Mo. She was confident that no matter how strong Duguchyo Mo was, he could not kill her instantly. However, in the next moment, Qing Qing's delicate body froze. Duguchyo Mo stretched out his hand and pinched her snow-white chin, pulling her in front of him. The corner of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. Looking at the handsome face that was so close to her, Qing Qing's breathing almost stopped. She felt a strong murderous aura emanating from Duguchyo Mo's body. You want to bribe me with just 10 bottles of Azura's blood? The heavenly demon sect must be dreaming. Do you think I don't know the current situation of the heavenly demon sect? Duguchyo Mo exposed her. You know. Qing Qing bit her red lips and her expression changed. The current situation of the heavenly demon sect was indeed worrying. In the entire Molo dynasty, other than the strongest royal family, the strongest among the 6 major forces was the Mystic Demon Palace. The Heavenly Demon sect was once a branch of the Mystic Demon Palace. Therefore, the Mystic Demon Palace and the Heavenly Demon sect were like fire and water. However, the Heavenly Demon sect could not compare to the Mystic Demon Palace in terms of foundation or prodigies. The prodigies ranked 3rd and 4th on the blood ranking were both from the Mystic Demon Palace. Meanwhile, Qing, the saintess of the heavenly demon sect, was only ranked 14th on the blood ranking. She did not even enter the top 10. This showed the gap between the heavenly demon sect and the mystic demon palace. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the Azura Blood Road was about to open again. Every time it opened, the Molo royal family and the 6 major forces would send their prodigies in to train. The ranking of the Molo dynasty's blood ranking relied heavily on the prodigies' performance in the Azura Blood Road. Moreover, not only these prodigies, but the 6 major forces would also produce rankings. The heavenly demon sect had been at the bottom for 4 consecutive years. If the prodigies of the heavenly demon sect could not obtain good results in the Azura Blood Road this time, the heavenly demon sect would be at the bottom again. The result of being at the bottom this time was that the heavenly demon sect would not be allowed to participate in the Azura Blood Road in the future. If they could not participate in the Azura Blood Road, they would lose a great opportunity to obtain the Azura Blood and other opportunities. This was undoubtedly one disaster after another for the heavenly demon sect. Therefore, the heavenly demon sect had been wantonly recruiting prodigies recently. However, prodigies were not so easy to find. At this time, the news of the white-haired sword demon had spread like wildfire. Therefore, the heavenly demon sect sent Qing to contact Dugu Qilma in an attempt to rope him in. Dugu Qilma had already heard the news about the heavenly demon sect. He was not a madman who only knew how to kill. His meticulous mind was not inferior to Yiguchin's at all. Then what do you want? Qing bit her lip and said. Being so close to Dugu Qilma made her look unnatural. Although she was the saintess of the heavenly demon sect, she still maintained her purity. Not all women in the Molo dynasty were as loose as Madame Black Scorpion. What do I want? Dugu Qilma pinched Qing's face. Her skin was fair and supple, and it felt good to pinch. Qing frowned slightly. This white-haired killing god, he wouldn't have any thoughts about her, right? As if he saw through Qing's thoughts, Dugu Qilma smiled coldly and said, "Don't worry. You are not worthy to be my woman. You can be a maid." Dugu Qilma sneered. You. Qing's beautiful eyes flashed with shame and anger. She was the saintess of the heavenly demon sect, yet she was looked down upon by someone. 100 bottles of Azura's blood, and I can agree to help the heavenly demon sect participate in the Azura blood path. Dugu Qilma said. Qing sucked in a cold breath. 100 bottles of Azura's blood was definitely asking for an exorbitant price. Even the heavenly demon sect would have to think twice. I can take you back to the heavenly demon sect and ask the elders for their opinion. These 10 bottles of Azura's blood can be considered a deposit. Qing didn't dare to directly agree. Instead, she handed the 10 bottles of Azura's blood to Dugu Qilma. She wasn't afraid that Dugu Qilma would take the Azura's blood and run away. After all, no matter how weak the heavenly demon sect was, they still had a false saint expert. Dugu Qilma accepted the Azura's blood. If he could really obtain 100 bottles of Azura's blood, he was absolutely confident that he could cultivate to the 9th level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge, and even break through to the divine dwelling stage wouldn't be impossible. Qing suddenly thought of something and snorted, "Oh right, you said that Qing isn't worthy to be your woman. Then there's another piece of news from the Azura blood path that you might be interested in." "What news?" Dugu Qilma asked. "I heard that the prodigy who obtains first place in the Azura blood path will have the right to marry Princess Luoho and become the prince consort of the Mola dynasty." Qing said, seemingly wanting to suppress Dugu Qilma's arrogance. She opened her mouth again. "Since you said that Qing isn't worthy of you, then Princess Luoho is worthy of you, right?" "Well, barely." Dugu Qilma nodded. "Ha!" Qing covered her mouth and laughed. She just wanted to mock Dugu Qilma's arrogance. She didn't expect Dugu Qilma to have such thoughts. Sigh, although Dugu Qilma's strength isn't weak, and even I can't see through him, but it would be good if he could enter the top 10 of the blood ranking. As for defeating the first place of the blood ranking and marrying Princess Luo Ho, Qing Qing shook her head. It wasn't that she looked down on Duguqimo. Instead, it was because this was indeed something that was almost impossible. Because the first place of the blood ranking of the Mola dynasty was mysterious and powerful. It was almost on par with Huang Qianqiu, who had concealed his identity in the Sword Dynasty and used the code name Z to dominate the first place of the Sword ranking. It could be seen how powerful the first place of the blood ranking was. Almost no prodigy could shake his position. Even Princess Luo Ho, who was the princess of a country, could only be second. Therefore, in Qing Qing's mind, even the white-haired sword demon who had set the record of slaughtering 13 cities was no match for the first place of the blood ranking. Chapter 11:17. Just as Dugu was about to head to the Sky Demon sect with Qing Qing. At the border of the Mola Kingdom. A huge battle was breaking out in the desert. The three silhouettes intertwined. Two of them joined forces to attack another silhouette. Boom! Another collision caused the air to be filled with dust and sand. A woman in a black dress looked across from her in the sandstorm. Her charming face was covered with a black veil and she wore a black dress that wrapped around her tall and curvy body. She exuded a strange charm like an enchantress in the night that bewitched one's mind. It was the demon of the demonic extermination sect, Wan. Opposite her stood a man and a woman. The woman was in her 20s and wore a moon-white dress that accentuated her extraordinary aura. Her hair was like a waterfall that swayed in the wind. She was beautiful and as cold as the moon. There was a mole at the corner of her left eye that was brimming with tears. It made her look cold and beautiful, and it made her look even more lovely. At this moment, she was holding a sword and facing off against Wan. On the other side was a youth wearing a Big Dipper robe and a Mizar star crown. He had a handsome face and his eyes were like the stars in the sky, deep and bright. If Yi Guchen were here, he wouldn't be unfamiliar with this man and woman. They were Gu Xiaoyang and Yi Tsangyue. One of them was the prodigy of the Starry Sword Pavilion. The other was the prodigy of the Misty Sword Pavilion. Yi Tsangyue, in particular, stared at Wanner with a cold and beautiful face. The two of them had always been at loggerheads with each other. Wan was the demon of the demonic extermination sect and was like a peerless enchantress. Yi Tsangyue was known as Fairy Tsangyue. She was pure like a flower that could only be admired from afar. One was a demon and the other a fairy. It was as if they were born to be at loggerheads. In reality, that was the case. Although Wan looked charming, she had inherited the ruthlessness of the demonic extermination sect. She had started a bloody massacre more than once. On the other hand, Yi Tsangyue possessed a noble and pure disposition. Even though she wasn't a saint, she would frequently help others, and that was why she was praised as a fairy. Because of their different standpoints and personalities, Wanner and Yi Tsangyue had fought against each other many times. They could be said to be fated opponents. Big Sister Tsangyu, I didn't think you would follow me. But, are you two going to fight together as husband and wife? Wan Er's face was covered by a black veil, revealing only a pair of beautiful eyes. Don't spout nonsense. Do you think I don't know your objective? I'm afraid you want to find the person who caused the Demon King to descend to the 9 heavens. I, Yi Tsangyue, will never let a witch like you succeed. Yi Tsangyue's voice was like a clear spring with a hint of coldness. One could imagine if Wanner were to bring the person who had caused the Demon Emperor's phenomenon back to the demonic extermination sect. It probably wouldn't be long before the demonic extermination sect nurtured an unparalleled Demon King prodigy. This was definitely not what Yi Tsangyue wanted to see. That's not up to you, sister. How about this? I have a suggestion, Wan said with a smile. What is it? Yi Tsangyue said coldly. It's very simple. Big sister, let me find the person who caused the Demon Emperor's phenomenon. If he's a handsome young man, I'll introduce him to Big Sister. Let's have a wonderful story of a fairy and a demon king. How about that? Won chuckled. How dare you? Yi Sang-yue's fairy face turned cold. Only then did she realize that Won was teasing her. Gu Xiaoyang's face also darkened. He had been pursuing Yi Sang-yue and hadn't given up until now. Ha, it's okay if Big Sister is reserved. Won will also be with you. Let's have a story of two women serving one man. How about that? Won laughed and spoke without restraint. Shut up. Yi Sang-yue couldn't stand Won-er's filthy words. She drew her sword and stabbed at Won-er. Gu Xiaoyang did the same. Although it was a long road to pursue, Gu Xiaoyang didn't give up. He had already decided that Yi Sang-yue would be his woman. One of them was young Master Xingyun, while the other was an 8th grade prodigy. They were definitely famous in the entire South Horizon region. Even though Won-er was the most talented witch in the demonic extermination sect, she didn't dare to be careless. Tuo Luo Extermination Light. Won-er activated a supreme martial art. She stretched out her hand and a black light appeared. Wherever it passed, even the air was annihilated. Yi Sang-yue's delicate body shook and a ball of strange brilliance appeared. It was like a full moon that spread out from her body and enveloped her body. The black demonic light fell on the shadow that was like a full moon, but it couldn't break through its defense. The power of the immortal divine fetus. Won-er's eyes turned solemn when she saw that. As an 8th grade prodigy, Yi Sang-yue was born with the immortal divine fetus in her body. It was like a silver full moon and was known to have the power of immortality. It was also the biggest reason why Yi Sang-yue could become one of the top prodigies in the South Horizon region. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes lit up when he saw that. He pursued Yi Sang-yue because he liked her. Secondly, if he could have sex with Yi Sang-yue, he might have a chance to obtain part of the power of the immortal divine fetus. Damn it! If the innate sword embryo hadn't been taken away by Yi Guqin, Yi Sang-yue would have been my woman by now. Gu Xiaoyang was unwilling to accept the fact. The innate sword embryo and the immortal divine fetus could be combined to form the innate indestructible sword embryo. Gu Xiaoyang believed that with Yi Sang-yue's dedication to cultivation, she would eventually want to obtain the innate indestructible sword embryo. Unfortunately, the innate sword embryo had been taken back by Yi Guqin. On the other side, Won didn't hesitate. She used her extreme speed movement skill and flashed into the distance. At the same time, she giggled and said, "Sister Sang-yue, don't worry. Won will keep her promise. I'll find the unparalleled demon king and make him your husband. Don't go." Yi Sang-yue's delicate body shook. The power of the immortal divine fetus spread out and dispersed the black light. Won had already slipped away. She had a 50% chance of winning against Yi Sang-yue alone, not to mention that Gu Xiaoyang was glaring at her from the side. Therefore, Won had no intention of being entangled with Yi Sang-yue and simply escaped. Damn it! Yi Sang-yue frowned. She calmed herself down and turned to look at Gu Xiaoyang. "Young Master Gu, why did you have to come along?" In the beginning, Yi Sang-yue wanted to track Won alone. However, Gu Xiaoyang took the initiative to join in later. "Firstly, I'm worried about Fairy Sang-yue's safety. Secondly, I wonder if Fairy Sang-yue knows that there's a mystery realm in the Molo dynasty called the Azura Bloody Road." Gu Xiaoyang smiled mysteriously. "What do you mean?" Yi Sang-yue asked indifferently. Gu Xiaoyang smiled and said, "My Starry Universe Sword Pavilion happened to receive a piece of news. In the deepest part of the Azura Bloody Road, there might be the inheritance of a supreme expert." "There's such a thing?" Yi Sang-yue was surprised. She only wanted to stop Won from searching for the person who had caused the Demon Emperor phenomenon. She did not know about this. If the person who caused the Demon Emperor phenomenon is really in the Molo dynasty, he will most likely participate in the Azura Bloody Road. At that time, as long as we conceal our identities and enter, not only will we be able to capture the person who caused the phenomenon, we might even be able to obtain the inheritance of a supreme expert, Gu Xiaoyang said with a smile. Yi Tsangyue nodded slightly when she heard this. She did not like Gu Xiaoyang's pestering. However, this piece of news from Gu Xiaoyang had indeed provided a lot of help. No matter who you are, Tsangyue will not allow you to cause the demon emperor to descend to the 9 heavens. Yi Tsangyue muttered in her heart. Her clear eyes were filled with determination. Chapter 11:18. Sword Dynasty, Sword Imperial City, in a secluded cave. Yi Guqin sat cross-legged on the ground with a grimace mask on his face. After a month of adjustment, his sea of consciousness origin was almost completely restored. Except for the broken divine abode in his body, Yi Guqin was in good condition in all other aspects and reached the best. A month's time is up, I wonder if the skyless sword realm can bring me a surprise? Yi Guqin muttered to himself in his heart. Although Yi Guqin, who cultivated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, had almost no suspense in reconstructing the divine abode. But it was best to reconstruct the divine abode before the prodigy battlefield began. Otherwise, Yi Guqin, whose divine abode was broken, would probably struggle even if he participated in the prodigy battlefield. It was difficult for him to compete with the top prodigies of the South Horizon region with just his physical body. After all, there might be dragon and phoenix list prodigies in the prodigy battlefield. That was the list of the younger generation of the entire South Horizon region, including the prodigies of many overlord forces, and the value was very high. It was far from being comparable to the sword list, blood list, war god list, and other dynasty prodigy lists. Not to mention that there might be 10 great young masters, 1 emperor, 4 emperors, and other monstrous prodigies. Those monstrous prodigies were Yi Guqin's real opponents. Although I'm still not sure whether my divine abode can be reconstructed in the skyless sword realm, at least, my clone improved very quickly. Yi Guqin thought in his heart. 1/3 of his sea of consciousness origin was given to Duguquma. Between the original body and the clone, the mind was connected. Any thoughts and actions of Duguquma, Yi Guqin could feel it without even thinking about it. Because to a certain extent, Duguquma was another him. And Duguquma's cultivation speed did not disappoint Yi Guqin. In just a month, he cultivated to the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge, which could be called abnormal. As for the massacre caused by Duguquma, Yi Guqin did not mind too much. This was because Yi Guqin himself was no saint. In addition, most of the people in the Moro dynasty were sinners, so Yi Guqin would not stop his doppelganger from becoming stronger through killing. The Azura blood path. That is the greatest opportunity for my avatar to grow. I have to participate. If I can't rebuild my divine dwelling in the skyless sword realm, at least there is still Duguquma. If he breaks through to the divine dwelling stage, his combat strength will not be weaker than mine, Yi Guqin pondered. He had made all the necessary preparations. At this moment, a respectful voice came from outside the cave, Your Highness Jinkui, Vice Alliance Leader Yi and the others are here. Oh, can we finally go? Yi Guqin stood up and walked out the door. Outside, it was already packed with people. The ones in the lead were naturally Yi Tianqing and the others. Many elders and disciples from Tianxian College and Sacred Cliff College were also present. In addition, Meng Zhen, Meng Churen, Luo Yu, and the others were also present. They wanted to see whether Yi Guqin was pretending or not. Elder Yi, let's go. Yi Guqin didn't waste any time and directly said. Action was the best proof. Seeing Yi Guqin agree to go to the skyless sword realm without the slightest hesitation, everyone in the Sword Emperor city revealed looks of admiration. Even those who had criticized Yi Guqin for winning the position of Jinkui sighed inwardly at this moment and temporarily dispelled their prejudice against Yi Guqin. Sigh, if only Jinkui could rebuild his divine dwelling, then no one would question him. A cultivator shook his head and sighed. It's not that simple to rebuild a divine dwelling. Some people also felt that there was no hope. But in any case, Yi Guqin's performance had caused public opinion to change. Meng Zhen's expression didn't look too good. He snorted coldly and said, "Empty courage, but nothing more than a brute. Can he really bring the leader out? He dares to enter the skyless sword realm without a trace of cultivation. In the end, let alone find the leader, I think he might not even be able to keep his life," Meng Churen said coldly. She naturally didn't believe that Yi Guqin, whose divine dwelling was destroyed, could walk out of the skyless sword realm unscathed. Yi Guqin didn't care about public opinion. Under the lead of Yi Tianqing and the others, they went to the skyless sword realm. A large group of cultivators followed behind them, all wanting to witness it with their own eyes. Meng Zhen, Meng Churen and the others followed closely behind. Without seeing Yi Guqin step into the skyless sword realm with their own eyes, they absolutely wouldn't believe it. The skyless sword realm was the most mysterious and dangerous of the 4 great secret realms of the Sword Dynasty. Its location was not in any of the 360 ridges. Instead, it was located in a barren mountain at the edge of the Sword Dynasty. In just a few days, Yi Guqin and the others also arrived at this boundary. As far as the eye could see, the continuous desolate mountain range was uninhabited, and the vegetation was sparse. Yi Guqin swept a glance and could vaguely sense an extremely terrifying sword concept brewing in the depths of the barren mountain range. That kind of sword concept even far surpassed the sword concept inside the sword tomb. "Let's go in." Yi Tianqing waved her hand slightly. Everyone entered the barren mountain range together. Although the entire mountain range stretched for thousands of miles, there was not a single monster. It was very strange, as if this was a forbidden land. Before long, everyone entered the deepest part of the mountain range. In front, an incomparably majestic barren mountain appeared. It looked to be at least 10,000 feet high. And at the foot of the barren mountain, a pitch-black cave that looked like the mouth of an ancient giant beast appeared. "That's the entrance to the skyless sword realm," Yi Tianqing said. Yi Guqin looked over. His soul's perception was extremely sharp, and he could sense that the sword pressure from before had come from within the cave. The pitch-black cave was like the giant mouth of an ancient fierce beast. It looked a little scary. In addition, there was a rumor that it was difficult to enter the skyless sword realm. Everyone present held their breaths and looked at Yi Guqin. Under the ghost mask, Yi Guqin's lips curled into a faint smile. As long as it was a secret realm related to swords, Yi Guqin would not have any fear. Yi Guqin did not hesitate and stepped out. Beside him, Jian Jinghong, who was wearing the sword master mask, also stepped out. He was Yi Tianqing's disciple and was in the sword sect echelon like Yi Guqin. This time, only the 2 of them entered. Looking at the 2 people who directly stepped into the cave. Even Meng Zhen and Meng Churen could only snort coldly and did not say anything. As soon as he stepped into the cave, Yi Guqin immediately felt a terrifying sword pressure surging over like toppling mountains and overturning seas. The pressure was even stronger than the pressure of the sword tomb. "There's actually such a strong sword chi pressure." Yi Guqin was also slightly surprised. But he quickly adjusted and released all kinds of sword Dao power to resist. As for Jian Jinghong, the sword mark between his eyebrows also released a sword intent, like the power of the heavenly Dao. It was the embryonic form of the heavenly Dao sword intent that Jian Jinghong possessed. He turned to Yi Guqin and said, "Brother Dugu, this kind of sword chi pressure is already considered weak. The entire skyless sword realm will exert different pressures according to the strength of the people who enter." Yi Guqin heard this and nodded slightly. Even with their cultivation, they were facing such a strong pressure. If it were those venerables or even false saints, what kind of pressure would they face? Now Yi Guqin could understand how powerful the proud divine prefecture was. The sword chi pressure that a false saint expert faced might be more than 100 times stronger than now. The Sword Dao Alliance's proud divine prefecture, I really want to see what kind of person he is, Yi Guqin thought to himself. Chapter 11-19. The cave was dark and deep, and the pressure of the sword qi was even greater than the pressure of the sword tomb. Therefore, Yiguchen and Jian Jinghong walked very slowly. However, the two of them both had the sword will of the creation realm. Yiguchen, in addition to the creation realm universal sword accident, also had 4 types of sword Dao, so it was easier for him to resist the pressure of the sword qi. But his spiritual dwelling was broken, and in terms of vital energy, he did not have the advantage of Jian Jinghong. Comparing the two of them were still advancing at about the same speed. After an unknown period of time, in the deepest part of the cave, there was a layer of wave-like barrier, glowing with a rainbow light, like the surface of a lake under the morning sun. That is. Yiguchen took a closer look. That should be the real entrance to the heavenless sword realm. The path of the cave was just a preliminary screening. Jian Jinghong said. In other words, this cave with a stronger sword qi than the sword tomb was just a preliminary screening, and did not even really enter the heavenless sword realm. Brother Dugu, there is still a chance for us to turn back now. If we were to truly step into this barrier, there would be no turning back. Either we break through it completely, or we are trapped within it. Or, we will die. Jian Jinghong's tone was grim. Brother Jinghong, at this point, do you still need to say such words? Yiguchen smiled. Whether it was to find the proud divine prefecture, or to seek an opportunity to transform his spiritual dwelling, Yiguchen had no reason to retreat. Ha, I said too much. Jian Jinghong also laughed heartily. He and Yiguchen were very similar in some ways. For the sword Dao, they were not afraid of life and death. The two of them smiled at each other, and stepped into the barrier at the same time. In an instant, it was as if they had experienced an eternity of time and space. The space was distorted, and the 4 directions were turned upside down. After the chaos, when Yiguchen woke up again, he found himself on a mountain peak. The whole world, the sky was high and the sea was wide, surrounded by an endless sea. Only the mountain peak that Yiguchen was on stood alone in the vast sea. This scene was extremely strange. Is this the heavenless sword realm? This reminded Yiguchen of when he was in the Saint Origin dynasty. He had entered the Heaven Path sword realm set up in the sword-seeking stele by Yi Tianqing, the 8th generation sword master. Yiguchen looked around but did not see Jian Jinghong's figure. Very clearly, anyone who entered the heavenless sword realm would be separated. The Heavenly Dao sword realm was set up by the 8th generation sword grandmaster. It contains the sword grandmaster's ultimate techniques and 108,000 sword souls. Since this skyless sword realm was set up by the 7th generation sword sect, nameless, I wonder if it also contains the sword sect's ultimate techniques. Yiguchen could not help but think. The ultimate technique of the sword sect was a powerful technique that was unique to the sword sect. It was a martial art that only the sword master echelon could inherit. Every sword master echelon was extraordinarily powerful. Yiguchen already had the 108,000 heaven-ripping sword soul and the reincarnation sword lotus. Gu Xiaoyang had the brilliant void sword qi and the firmament sword print. Huang Qianqiu had also used the sword sect's ultimate technique, the boundless holy sword. Di Haotian and Jian Jinghong were both sword master echelons. They definitely had at least one sword sect's ultimate technique. If I can obtain more sword sect's ultimate techniques, perhaps I will have a slight advantage over the other sword master echelons, Yiguchen pondered. He recalled the heavenly sword of heaven and earth that he had used once at the Sky Sword Peak. He learned from the 8th generation sword grandmaster, Yi Tianqing, that move was the 7th generation sword grandmaster's ultimate technique. Shaking his head slightly, Yiguchen temporarily cleared his distracting thoughts. The most important thing for him now was to think about how to pass the skyless sword realm. At this moment, Yiguchen suddenly felt as if there was a gaze on him. His senses were already extremely sharp. At this moment, he raised his head and looked over. On the cliff in front of him, a faint shadow suddenly disappeared. Yiguchen frowned slightly. He was certain that there was definitely a gaze on him just now. And it was definitely not Jian Jinghong who entered with him. Suddenly, under Yi Guqin's feet, lines of formation patterns spread out. Streaks of sword chi rushed out from the ground. Is the test finally here? Yi Guqin's figure flashed. Hundreds of sword chi rushed out from the ground and finally merged into a giant sword. Yi Guqin observed carefully. He also had some understanding of sword formations. In addition, he was familiar with swords. It was not too difficult for him to break this kind of sword formation. Soon, this first sword formation was broken. And the moment the sword formation was broken, the sea surface in front suddenly rumbled and rolled, waves splashing everywhere. Under Yi Guqin's slightly surprised gaze, the second mountain peak rose from the bottom of the sea. Such a scene was truly somewhat alarming. The formation patterns under Yi Guqin's feet lit up. He was once again transported to the second mountain peak. On this mountain peak, there was also a large formation. The difficulty was more than double that of the previous large formation. This large formation contains the Tao of Yin and Yang. Yi Guqin could see at a glance. He continued to break it. The lethality of this sword formation was not very strong, but it was very complicated. If one did not have a certain understanding of sword Tao, they would definitely not be able to break this sword formation. With Yi Guqin's talent as a sword demon and the assistance of the ancient tree of enlightenment, Yi Guqin quickly broke the second sword formation. The moment he broke the yin-yang sword formation, the third mountain peak rose from the sea surface in front of him. And this third sword formation seemed to contain the power of heaven and earth. Sword chi rushed into the sky and suppressed Yi Guqin. The power of this sword formation was more than double that of the second sword formation. This sword formation contains the power of heaven and earth, but it only lacks one thing, and that is people. Yi Guqin's black eyes were deep and saw through the foundation of the formation. When he thought of the two great formations from before, he suddenly felt enlightened and enlightened. The first sword formation is one yuan, the second is two polarities, the third is heaven, earth, and man, three talents. Yi Guqin had a kind of enlightenment. That was to say, in the heavenless sword realm, it was very likely that there were 10 large formations. The power of each large formation was multiple times the power of the previous large formation. Do not look down on this double. If this continued to stack up, to the final 8th, 9th, and even 10th sword formation, that degree of difficulty was unimaginable. Its complexity and power might even be 1,000 times more than the first sword formation. Is this the difficulty set by the 7th generation sword sect Nameless? Even Yi Guqin also sighed slightly in his heart. He now somewhat understood why the proud divine continent would be trapped in the heavenless sword realm. It was very likely that he was trapped in the 9th or 10th sword formation. Following that, Yi Guqin spent several days before completely breaking through the 3rd sword formation. The 4th four-symbol sword formation that followed, the power was twice as complicated and difficult as the 3rd three-talents sword formation. Yi Guqin naturally spent more time. And in this passage of time, the people outside the heavenless sword realm were also somewhat impatient. Chapter 11:20. In a twinkle, 7 days had already passed since Yi Guqin and Jian Jinghong entered the heavenless sword realm. And the crowd outside the heavenless sword realm not only did not decrease, it even increased instead. They all wanted to know very much what the final outcome would be for Yi Guqin and Jian Jinghong. Would they perish inside, or escape with their lives? As for the so-called finding the proud divine continent, virtually no one harbored this hope. Except for Yi Tianqing alone. Not knowing why, he just had a vague intuition. Yi Guqin was a person who could create miracles. But along with the passing of day after day, the confidence and patience in some people's hearts were also gradually worn clean. There's no movement at all for so many days, could he have already perished inside? Meng Churen had also been waiting outside the heavenless sword realm all along. Her greatest hope now was for Yi Guqin to perish, then let her big brother Luo Yu ascend and become the Jiankui. The heavenless sword realm is the most mysterious and dangerous of the 4 great mystic realms. Since ancient times, who knows how many powerhouses and geniuses have been trapped inside. I admit that Dugu Wubai has innate saint talent, but the current him should probably be on the brink of despair too. Luo Yu shook his head slightly and said. Although he was a little uncomfortable with not being able to become the Jiankui, his personality was not too extreme. But he still felt that Yi Guqin did not have a trace of hope. Arrogant people always have to pay the price. Sometimes, this price will be life. Meng Zhen gave a cold laugh. He suddenly turned his head to look at Yi Tianqing, his tone carrying a hint of amusement as he asked, Deputy Alliance Head Yi, I wonder if you have any regrets in your heart now. Yi Tianqing's expression was indifferent from beginning to end. He said coolly, I never do things that I regret. Moreover, it's too early to make a judgment now. Haha, Deputy Alliance Head Yi means that that kid can come out safely, or is it that he can bring Alliance Head Proud Divine Continent out together? Meng Zhen found it funny and could not help shaking his head and laughing. The other 3 pseudo-saints following him also started laughing at the same time. This joke was unavoidably a little funny. In their eyes, Yi Guqin could not even protect himself. Find the proud divine continent. Wait for your next life. The laughter of Meng Zhen, Meng Churen, and the others was rather jarring to the ears of the Sacred Cliff College students. I really hope that Brother Dugu can come back alive and give them a good slap in the face. Ling Emoshu's eyes were cold. I believe in Master. After all, he has overcome so many difficulties. This one will be the same. Mu Xingzu clasped her hands together and prayed for Yi Guqin in her heart. Time flowed by. 7 days passed. Half a month had already passed since Yi Guqin and Jian Jinghong entered the Heavenless Sword Realm. Within the Skyless Sword Realm, within a killing array. Jian Jinghong's clothes were stained with blood, and there were sword wounds all over his body. A terrifying sword concept emanated from his glabella and enveloped the surroundings. It was the heavenly sword intent. As Jian Jinghong's innate ability, the heavenly Dao sword intent was undoubtedly powerful. But at this moment, he could only barely resist. He couldn't resist at all, let alone break the formation. The 7th formation. Am I, Jian Jinghong, going to die here today? Blood kept flowing from the corner of Jian Jinghong's mouth. As a disciple of heavenly love, he was ranked 2nd on the sword roll. Jian Jinghong's talent and strength in sword Dao was indeed unquestionable. In a short half a month, he broke through to the 7th formation. However, as soon as he entered the 7th formation, Jian Jinghong could immediately feel the pressure increase exponentially. He had a premonition that he couldn't break through this sword formation. It was even very likely that he would die here. However, the truth was indeed not out of Jian Jinghong's expectations. Looking at the 7 crisscrossing sword auras in the sword formation, Jian Jinghong's eyes were filled with determination. 1 essence, 2 forms, 3 talents, 4 symbols, 5 elements, 6 directions, I've broken through these 6 sword formations. Am I really going to die in this 7 stars sword formation? Jian Jinghong gritted his teeth. He wasn't afraid of death. If he was, Jian Jinghong wouldn't have chosen to enter the Heavenless Sword Realm. He was afraid that he would disappoint his master, Heavenly Love. At this moment, 7 sword auras that were like galaxies pierced towards Jian Jinghong. In the next moment, Jian Jinghong was about to die. Sorry, Master, disciple has disappointed you, Brother Dugu. I hope you can fulfill Master's expectations and save the alliance leader of the proud divine region. Jian Jinghong muttered in his heart. He pointed his finger at the space between his eyebrows, wanting to completely erupt the power of the heavenly Dao sword intent and make a final gamble. And at this moment, the sequence emblem on the back of his hand suddenly lit up with a dazzling light. Then, this ball of light enveloped Jian Jinghong's entire body. In the blink of an eye, this ball of light carried Jian Jinghong's entire body and directly disappeared on the spot. After Jian Jinghong disappeared, on the cliff of this mountain peak, a hazy figure vaguely appeared and let out a low murmur. The sword sect echelon has a chance to avoid death. Consider it your luck. Then, there's only one person left, this hazy figure muttered and disappeared on the spot again, as if evaporating. At the same time, in the barren mountains outside the heavenless sword domain. In the void, a burst of light suddenly surged, attracting the attention of everyone around. What's that? Everyone looked over at the same time. Yi Tianqing and the others also immediately looked over. The light dissipated, and a figure staggered out. His clothes were stained with blood and torn, and his entire person looked like he was severely injured. That's Jian Jinghong! Exclamations sounded from all directions. Disciple! Yi Tianqing's eyes flashed, and she immediately brought Jian Jinghong over and let him consume the medicinal pill. What's going on? Didn't they say that the heavenless sword domain is a dangerous place? How could Jian Jinghong be directly teleported out? Yes, it's really unbelievable. Many people revealed a look of surprise. Meng Zhen and the others also revealed a look of surprise. However, Jian Jinghong's miserable state still made everyone feel a chill in their hearts. As one of the most powerful sword Dao prodigies of the Sword Dynasty, it was indeed rare for Jian Jinghong to fall into such a sorry state. How could this be? Many people asked. Jian Jinghong shook his head and said, I don't know the details, but I could only break through to the seventh sword formation. I was destined to die, but in the end, I was somehow teleported out. So that's how it is. It's really strange. Everyone was confused. I'm sorry, Master. I couldn't find any trace of the Alliance Master of the Proud Divine Prefecture. I've disappointed you. Jian Jinghong looked ashamed. It's fine. It's lucky to be able to come out alive. What about Duge Wubai? Yi Tianqing asked. We separated when we entered the heavenless sword domain. We don't know each other's situation. Jian Jinghong shook his head. These words made Mu Xingzu and the disciples of Sacred Cliff College reveal worried expressions. Even Jian Jinghong is in such a sorry state. Duge Wubai, whose spiritual palace was destroyed, is probably in an even worse situation. Many people thought so in their hearts. Meng Zhen stroked his beard and said, based on Jian Jinghong's situation, I'm afraid that kid is doomed. This is the consequence of not knowing one's limits. He's just throwing away his life in vain. Meng Churen curled her lips and smiled. Chapter 1121. Following that, Jian Jinghong was transported out in a sorry state. Everyone lost even more hope in Yiguchen. Even Jian Jinghong, who possessed the heavenly Dao sword intent, failed. Then how could Yiguchen, whose divine abode was crippled, be any better? This was the instinctive thought in everyone's hearts. And at this moment, in the heavenless sword realm, Yiguchen also already made it to the seventh array formation. His situation, however, was not what outsiders had imagined. Although Yiguchen also had many wounds on his body, compared to Jian Jinghong, it was God knows how many times better. Looking at it now, it's lucky that my divine abode was broken. Otherwise, the array formation I'm facing might be more than 10 times more powerful than now, Yiguchen muttered to himself. The 10 array formations in the heavenless sword realm would adjust their power appropriately according to the intruder's strength. Of course, it was only the power that was adjusted. As for the difficulty of cracking the array formation, there would not be any change. If a person who was not proficient in Sword Dao fell into the heavenless sword realm, they would still be trapped to death, unable to escape for the rest of their lives. But to Yiguchen, who possessed freakish Sword Dao talent, he would crack these 10 sword arrays sooner or later. The difference was just the length of time. Just as Yiguchen continued to crack the array formation in the heavenless sword realm. On the other side, within the Mola dynasty, Duge Qiuma also followed Qingqing to the Heavenly Demon sect. The Heavenly Demon sect was originally a branch of the Mystic Demon Palace. Because of some conflicts, as well as differences in ideology, this branch of people became independent and established the Heavenly Demon sect. Hence, the mystic demon palace people had always called the heavenly demon sect traitors. But because the heavenly demon sect's strength itself was not considered too weak, if the mystic demon palace wanted to completely eradicate it, they would also suffer great losses. Hence, the mystic demon palace had no choice but to let the heavenly demon sect become one of the 6 great factions. But even so, the mystic demon palace had never stopped suppressing the heavenly demon sect in all kinds of ways. And this Azura Blood Road, the mystic demon palace undoubtedly also wanted the heavenly demon sect to continue to be at the bottom, and then lose the qualifications to participate in the Azura Blood Road. Losing this great opportunity, without the Azura blood, the heavenly demon sect's strength would undoubtedly weaken again. The heavenly demon sect was located in the heavenly mountain range. At this moment, a man and a woman appeared on the outskirts of the celestial demon mountain range. It was Duguchilma and Ching Ching. "We're here. This is the heavenly demon sect. What do you think, young Master Dugu?" Ching Ching said with a smile. "Not bad." Dugu's tone was indifferent. Inside the celestial devil mountain range, there were towering pavilions and caves everywhere. Shadows of people came and went. It was indeed a flourishing place. Moreover, Dugu's mystic ability could faintly sense some powerful and obscure auras lurking within the heavenly demon mountain range. They must be some false saint experts from the heavenly devil sect. Since it's possible, then young Master Dugu can join the heavenly demon sect. I'm sure those elders will fight to take you as their disciple. Ching Ching pursed her lips and smiled. 100 bottles of Azura blood. I only agreed to help the heavenly demon sect participate in the Azura Blood Road, but I never said I would become a disciple of the heavenly demon sect. Dugu Chilma indifferently said. Although the heavenly demon sect's strength wasn't bad, it couldn't be compared to the Sword Dynasty. As for his original body, Yi Guqin, his identity was already Jinkue from the Sword Dynasty. Compared to this identity, Dugu Chilmo really didn't care about the identity of a mere heavenly demon sect disciple. Alright then. Ching Ching held her forehead, somewhat speechless as she muttered in her heart. Others want to join the heavenly demon sect but don't have the chance. Now that I'm begging you to join, you don't even appreciate it. Of course, Ching Ching could only say this in her heart. After this period of contact, she also understood that Dugu Chilma was a man of his word. It was impossible to change his mind. Then, Ching Ching led Dugu Chilma into the heavenly demon sect's mountain gate. The two of them immediately attracted the attention of a group of heavenly demon sect disciples. Saintess Ching Ching is back. Who's that white-haired young man next to her? He's actually so close to Saintess Ching Ching. And by the looks of it, Saintess Ching Ching seems to be rather polite to that white-haired young man. What's going on? The heavenly demon sect disciples discussed all around. As the saintess of the heavenly demon sect, Ching Ching's strength and looks were on par. Naturally, she was the object of adoration in the hearts of many heavenly demon sect disciples. And Ching Ching had always been blunt with the opposite sex. This was the first time the heavenly demon sect disciples saw Ching Ching being so polite to someone of the opposite sex. For a moment, many cold and dangerous gazes fell on Dugu Chilma. If Ching Ching was not beside them, these heavenly demon sect disciples would probably not be able to hold back and directly attack Dugu Chilma. As members of the Mola dynasty, they had no qualms about attacking in the first place. Looks like you're quite popular in the heavenly demon sect. Feeling those gazes that seemed to penetrate him, Dugu Chilma's tone was indifferent. Young Master Dugu, please don't mind them. They don't know your identity, Ching Ching said hurriedly. She was afraid that Dugu Chilma would stare the group of heavenly demon sect disciples to death at the slightest disagreement. If that happened, the situation would be unsalvageable. If I minded, they would have been a bunch of dead people long ago. Dugu Chilma narrowed his eyes slightly and sneered. Not everyone was like Ching Ching, who had a spiritual item protecting her sea of consciousness. Against these small fries of the heavenly demon sect, Duguchilma could kill a bunch of them with a single glance. However, this was someone else's sect after all, and Duguchilma also needed the Azura blood, so he did not attack. Just as Ching Ching was about to lead Duguchilma to a heavenly demon sect elder, a strange voice suddenly sounded. "Oh, isn't this our saintess Ching Ching? Where did you bring back this wild man from?" As these words were spoken, a flirtatious woman in a revealing red dress appeared. Her snow-white breasts were exposed as she walked over, swaying her slender waist. The woman looked at Ching Ching with a gaze that vaguely contained some jealousy and coldness. "Li Rui, why should I report to you what I do?" Ching Ching's tone also turned cold. The flirtatious woman named Li Rui's lips curled up as she sneered. "Our heavenly demon sect is not some refugee camp that can bring back any random cat or dog." "Shut up." Ching Ching's expression changed slightly. She knew that the young man beside her was a ruthless person who had slaughtered 13 cities. He definitely could not be provoked casually. Sure enough, in the next moment, Ching Ching felt a strand of coldness assault her. Duguchilma tilted his head slightly and looked at Li Rui. He said indifferently, "You dare to say that again?" "Humph. A spirit bridge of heaven and earth cultivator dares to threaten me? Ching Ching, aren't your eyesight a little too low? You actually found such an arrogant person. I'm standing right here. What can you do to me?" Li Rui placed her hands on her hips and revealed a mocking smile. Duguchilma also smiled. However, his smile was very cold. His personality was naturally cruel and ruthless, so at this moment, he naturally would not be indifferent. Duguchilma's dark golden soul-devouring demon eye suddenly stared straight at Li Rui. Chapter 1122. In the blink of an eye, Li Rui felt as if her sea of consciousness was being overturned. The spirit power in her sea of consciousness could not help but go berserk, as if it was going to burst out of her head. "Ah!" Li Rui clutched her head with both hands and could not help but let out a shrill scream. Blood flowed out of her 7 orifices at the same time. Her seductive face was covered in blood and looked extremely miserable. The contempt and arrogance from before were nowhere to be seen. "What's going on? What happened to senior sister Li Rui?" The surrounding heavenly devil sect disciples turned pale with fright. They only saw Li Rui suddenly clutching her head and screaming as blood flowed out of her 7 orifices. They did not understand what had happened. No one would have thought that Duguchilma had intervened, because he had only glanced at Li Rui indifferently. "Young master, please have mercy and spare her lowly life," Ching Ching hurriedly said. She did not really sympathize with Li Rui. It was Duguchilma. If he killed Li Rui, it would inevitably affect the future cooperation with the heavenly devil sect. Duguchilma retracted his gaze. At the same time, he frowned and thought to himself. It's still not enough. At my current level, I can't kill a divine dwelling stage heaven pride with the soul-devouring demon eye. Li Rui's cultivation was also at the divine dwelling stage. Therefore, Duguchilma could only injure her with the soul-devouring demon eye, and could not directly crush their heads like he did with the other small fries. But when Duguchilma broke through to the divine dwelling stage, the soul-devouring demon eye's ability would naturally skyrocket. It might even unlock new abilities. Li Rui's body collapsed on the ground, breathing heavily, her chest heaving violently. She took out a handkerchief to wipe the blood from her face. Her face was pale. She looked at Duguchilma with a faint trace of fear in her eyes. Impossible, this young man only has the cultivation of the heaven and earth spirit bridge stage. How could he make me so miserable with just a glance? Li Rui roared in her heart, unable to understand. Since Duguchilma's cultivation was slightly lower, she did not immediately associate him with the white-haired sword demon who had caused a bloodbath in the Molo dynasty. Because the white-haired sword demon had massacred 13 cities and even killed many blood-ranking heaven prides, the outside world naturally thought that his cultivation level should be at least at the divine dwelling stage. No one would have thought that Duguchuma, who had killed more than 10 blood-ranking prodigies, was only at the heaven and earth spirit bridge. I'm sorry. Young master, we've made a joke out of the Sky Fiends sect, Qing said, shaking her head. Subsequently, Qing gave a brief explanation. As it turned out, she and Li Rui were rivals for the position of saintess of the Sky Demon sect. In the end, Qing succeeded while Li Rui failed. Naturally, she was hostile towards Qing. That was why they were being targeted. Qing, as the holy maiden of the heavenly demon sect, you actually colluded with outsiders to harm your fellow sect members. I'm going to report this to the elders. Li Rui shrieked, her face full of resentment. After suffering such a loss, she was naturally unable to swallow this anger. Duguchuma frowned slightly, killing intent flashing in his eyes. If they weren't in the heavenly demon sect, Duguchuma wouldn't mind killing her. Just then, a deep voice sounded, "What's going on?" An old man wearing a black robe with a skull pattern appeared. His aura was strong, and he was a celestial palace expert. Greetings, Elder Ku Yuan. The surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples cupped their hands in greeting. Elder Ku Yuan, you must seek justice for me. Saintess Qing actually brought outsiders here and attacked me. I hope Elder Ku Yuan will severely punish her, and that boy must die. Li Rui walked directly to Elder Ku Yuan, complaining in a shrill voice. Is that so? Elder Ku Yuan looked at Qing, and then focused his gaze on Duguchuma. While crying, Li Rui secretly glanced at Qing, a vengeful sneer in her eyes. She obviously thought that Qing would be punished by Elder Ku Yuan. However, Li Rui saw that Qing was looking at her with a hint of mockery in her eyes. What's going on? She doesn't seem worried at all. Li Rui's heart sank. Qing, this person, could he be? Not only was there not the slightest trace of anger on Elder Ku Yuan's face, the gaze with which he looked at Duguchuma even contained a trace of surprise and faint joy. Elder Ku Yuan, I'm glad I didn't disappoint you. I've brought him here. Qing cupped her hands and said. This scene caused all of the surrounding Sky Devil sect's disciples to be at a loss. What's going on? Li Rui was also a little stunned, not understanding what was going on. Elder Ku Yuan looked at Duguchuma. Although he was a little surprised by Duguchuma's realm, he still said, I didn't expect this young friend to be the white-haired sword demon who recently stirred up a storm in the Molo dynasty and massacred 13 cities. Now that I've met him today, he's indeed extraordinary. Elder Ku Yuan's words rang out. The atmosphere instantly froze. All the surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples looked at Duguchuma at the same time. Their eyes were wide open, as if their eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. What? He's the white-haired sword demon. He's the unparalleled demon king who massacred 13 cities. Right, he has white hair, and his right eye is dark gold. He does match the rumored white-haired sword demon's appearance, but his realm, there was an uproar in the heavenly demon mountain range. It could be said that apart from his realm, Duguchuma perfectly matched the rumored white-haired sword demon in all other aspects. White-haired sword demon. How could it be him? He's just a heaven and earth spirit bridge. Li Rui's legs trembled, and she fell to the ground with a thud. Her eyes were still filled with shock. She recalled how Duguchuma had only glanced at her, and she was in so much pain that she wished she was dead. She suddenly understood that Duguchuma was most likely the white-haired sword demon. Many of the surrounding heavenly demon sect disciples felt a chill in their hearts when they recalled their hostility towards Duguchuma. If they were in a different environment, they would have become a pile of corpses. Haha, it's a wise decision for you to join our heavenly demon sect. Elder Ku Yuan chuckled. Although Duguchuma's realm was on the low side in his expectations. No matter what, he was still a legendary figure. It was not bad for him to join the heavenly demon sect. When Duguchuma heard that, he frowned and said, That's not my condition. What's the matter? Elder Ku Yuan looked at Qing Qing. Qing Qing smiled helplessly and said, I'm sorry, Elder Ku Yuan. Young Master Dugu agreed to help our Heavenly Demon sect participate in the Azura Blood Road, but he did not agree to join the Heavenly Demon sect. Moreover, the reward is not 10 bottles of Azura blood, but 100 bottles. Qing Qing lowered her head after saying that. Her expression was a little unnatural, and it was obvious that she did not think it was possible. What? 100 bottles of Azura blood? Elder Ku Yuan's face changed when he heard that. Chapter 1123. Dugu's exorbitant demand was beyond Elder Ku Yuan's expectations. In truth, when someone in the Heavenly Demon sect had proposed to recruit Dugu with 10 bottles of Azura blood, the other elders had objected. They felt that there was no need to waste 10 bottles of Azura blood. No matter how weak the Heavenly Demon sect was, it was still one of the 6 great factions of the Molo Empire. In their minds, as long as the Heavenly Demon sect extended an olive branch, Dugu would be begging for a demon to agree. How could he refuse? It should be said that the Heavenly Demon sect did not accept just anyone. But in the end, the Heavenly Demon sect still decided to use 10 bottles of Azura blood just in case. After all, the Heavenly Demon sect could not be at the bottom of the Azura Blood Road. But now, Dugu had come to the Heavenly Demon sect. However, his request had far exceeded Elder Ku Yuan's expectations. Not only Elder Ku Yuan, all of the surrounding Heavenly Devil sect's disciples were also shocked by Dugu Chuma's words. They did use the Azura blood to cultivate. But it was calculated by drops. An ordinary Heavenly Demon sect disciple would only have a few dozen to 100 drops of Azura blood. It could not be calculated by bottles. Li Rui also took a deep breath, and the shock in her eyes gradually turned into calmness. She knew that Elder Ku Yuan would definitely not agree to Dugu Chuma's absurd request. As expected, Elder Ku Yuan frowned deeply. He looked at Dugu Chuma and said, Little friend Dugu, are you joking? Elder, do you think I'm joking? Dugu asked indifferently. You should know that the Azura blood is measured by drops. 10 bottles of Azura blood is already very valuable. Is it not enough for you to make a move? Elder Ku Yuan asked in a low voice. Dugu shook his head, and the corners of his lips curved in a sneer. I know that my value is comparable to 100 bottles of Azura blood. Ha! Elder Ku Yuan did not think much of Dugu's words. If Dugu Chuma was a heaven pride of the 3rd layer of the divine dwelling stage, Elder Ku Yuan would naturally seriously consider it. However, Dugu's cultivation at the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge had already caused Elder Ku Yuan to question the authenticity of the rumors. Could a cultivator at the 5th level of the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth kill more than 10 geniuses of the blood ranking and massacre 13 cities? Doubt arose in Elder Ku Yuan's heart. At this moment, Li Rui was unyielding. Her eyes flashed with a hint of schadenfreude. It was Qing Qing who had brought Dugu here. If things went wrong, Qing Qing, the saintess, would also be affected. This was something Li Rui was happy to see. She hurriedly instigated from the side, Elder Ku Yuan, I think the legend of the white-haired sword demon is most likely just a rumor. You can't believe it. Elder Ku Yuan's face darkened. Naturally, he could not agree to Dugu's request. I'm sorry, but I can't promise you 100 bottles of Azura blood. Elder Ku Yuan's tone turned cold. Heh. Dugu Chiomo did not say anything. Anyway, it would be the Heavenly Demon sect who would regret it, not him. On the side, Qing Qing also bit her lips. She could feel that Dugu Chiomo was hiding very deeply, and she also had an intuition. If the Heavenly Demon sect hired Dugu Chiomo, the blood path would absolutely be foolproof. Unfortunately, Elder Ku Yuan did not believe Dugu Chiomo, and did not even bother to report this matter to the higher-ups of the Heavenly Demon sect. Just when the atmosphere was a little stiff. Suddenly, a long roar sounded from a cave dwelling in the heavenly demon mountain range. A powerful aura of the divine dwelling stage spread out. Ha! I finally broke through to the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. I, Yen Kun, will definitely be ranked in the top 10 of the blood ranking. A young man in a green robe broke out of the cave dwelling. The aura of the second layer of the divine dwelling stage spread out, sweeping across the surrounding mountains and forests. It's Yen Kun, he finally came out. He broke through to the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. Yen Kun's strength has greatly increased. It seems that our heavenly demon sect will be saved on the Azura blood path. Seeing the young man in a green robe appear, the disciples of the heavenly demon sect began to discuss. Yen Kun. Leroy's bewitching face also revealed a look of infatuation. As for Elder Ku Yuan, his gloomy face also looked a lot better because of Yen Kun's appearance. His gaze towards Dugu Chilma could not help but carry a trace of contempt. With Yen Kun, whose strength had greatly increased, was there a need to recruit Dugu Chilmo? He actually came out. Qingqing knitted her brows in a frown. He is. Dugu Chilmo said casually. He is the chosen of my heavenly demon sect. His strength was below mine before. I was ranked 14th on the blood ranking, and he was ranked 15th. But this time he broke through to the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. It seems that he has hopes of being ranked in the top 10 of the blood ranking, Qingqing said. At the same time, she sighed inwardly. After Yen Kun came out, the heavenly demon sect did not seem to need Dugu Chio-mo anymore. Looking at you, you seem to dislike Yen Kun, Dugu Chio-mo said. It's just a little annoying. Qingqing pursed her red lips. After Yen Kun came out, seeing so many people gathered at the mountain gate, he stepped into the air and came over. When he saw Qingqing, his eyes lit up. I didn't expect to see Qingqing as soon as I came out. Were you waiting for me here? Yen Kun laughed. Qingqing's pretty face froze, and she did not answer. Leroy stared at Qingqing with jealousy. She admired Yen Kun, but Yen Kun only treated her as a plaything. His heart was still with Qingqing. Ha, Yen Kun, you came out at the right time. Otherwise, our heavenly demon sect would have wasted 10 bottles of Azura's blood. Elder Ku Yuan smiled. What's going on? Yen Kun was a little confused. Then, someone explained to him a little. Only then did Yen Kun notice Dugu Chio-mo. There was also a playful smile at the corners of his mouth. A heaven and earth spirit bridge cultivator dares to ask for 100 bottles of Azura's blood based on a rumor. Qingqing, you want to bring such a person back to the heavenly demon sect? Yen Kun's tone was full of disdain. As soon as he came out of seclusion, his strength skyrocketed, and his confidence swelled. Looks like there's nothing to talk about. Dugu Chio-mo turned to leave. Wait. Elder Ku Yuan frowned. What? Dugu Chio-mo's face was indifferent. Since you don't want to join the heavenly demon sect, then forget it. The heavenly demon sect doesn't need to recruit you, but hand over the 10 bottles of Azura's blood as a deposit. Elder Ku Yuan said coldly. It could be said that he changed his attitude faster than flipping a book. Elder, I've already agreed to give those 10 bottles of Azura's blood to young Master Dugu. Qingqing said through gritted teeth. She had already discussed it on the way here with Dugu Chio-mo. No matter the final result, the 10 bottles of Azura's blood would belong to Dugu Chio-mo. After all, she couldn't let Dugu Chio-mo make a trip for nothing. Qingqing, don't say anything. 10 bottles of Azura's blood isn't a small number. We can't let this guy take advantage of us. Yen Kun frowned and said sharply when he saw Qingqing protecting Dugu Chio-mo. Dugu Chio-mo narrowed his dark golden eyes. His gaze towards Yen Kun was already filled with killing intent. Just as the atmosphere was tense, a heavenly demon sect disciple suddenly ran in from outside the mountain gate in a panic. Something bad has happened. People from the mystic demon palace, Six Desire Demon Sect, and Demonic Beast Sect are here. What? Elder Ku Yuan was shocked when he heard this. Qingqing's gaze was also slightly shaken. As for Yan Kun, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. But when he thought about how he had already broken through, that trace of fear turned into confidence. Chapter 1124. Hearing the Sky Demon Sect disciples' words, the Sky Demon Sect members present seemed to have recalled some bad memories, and their expressions turned ugly. Visit the mountain? Dugu turned to Qingqing. Qingqing explained, the so-called visit is when the prodigies of other sects come to exchange pointers. The 6 major forces of the Molo dynasty often do this. But our Sky Demon Sect never ends well every time. Qingqing's expression didn't look too good either. Dugu knew that by not too good, it probably meant that they had been humiliated to the extreme. After all, the Sky Demon Sect was a branch of the Mystic Demon Palace. In terms of prodigies, they were definitely inferior to the other 5 major forces. Humph, those great influences have come knocking on our door. They clearly want to give our Heavenly Demon Sect a show of strength before the Azura Blood Road opens. Elder Ku Yuan's complexion darkened once more as he coldly said. Elder, don't worry. I'm not the same as before. Yan Kun's words were filled with great confidence. In the past, when the 6 major sects visited each other's mountains, the Sky Demon Sect disciples suffered the most. Especially Yan Kun, who had once humiliated himself by kneeling in front of a prodigy from the Mystic Demon Palace, causing him to lose all face. After that, Yan Kun turned his grief into motivation and crazily went into seclusion to cultivate. That was how he had broken through. Ha, is the Sky Demon Sect so unwelcoming of old friends? An old voice sounded, and immediately, 3 groups of people walked in from outside the mountain gate. The 3 groups of people were from the Mystic Demon Palace, the Demonic Beast Sect, and the 6 Desires Demon Sect. Each group of people was led by 2 people. One of them was a venerable one, while the other was an outstanding junior. There weren't many people from the 3 major sects, but each of them had an extraordinary aura. The one who spoke was a supremacy from the Mystic Demon Palace called Fan Yuan. Beside him stood a grey-robed youth with an indifferent expression and a fixed gaze. Humph, Fan Yuan, you old fogey. Elder Ku Yuan's expression was gloomy. He knew that Fan Yuan and the others were here to attack the Sky Demon Sect's confidence. But they couldn't refuse. If they refused the other sect's visit, the Sky Demon Sect would lose all face, and their already low reputation would fall to the bottom. Yuan Huang, it's you. Yan Kun looked at the grey-clothed youth beside Fan Yuan, and his eyes immediately turned red. It's Yuan Huang. It's him again. That's right. He was the one who defeated Holy Sun Yan Kun at the mountain last time. He even made Holy Sun Yan Kun kneel before him. Will it happen again this time? How is that possible? Holy Sun Yan Kun has just come out of seclusion and his strength has increased greatly. This time, the one who should be worried is Yuan Huang. Some of the Sky Demon Sect disciples in the area whispered to each other, but based on their words, their confidence in Yan Kun increased by leaps and bounds. Oh, so it's a defeated opponent. The grey-clothed youth called Yuan Huang shook his head indifferently. Yuan Huang, the current me cannot be compared to the past. This time, I will definitely return the humiliation from before in double. Yan Kun coldly shouted. Following the arrival of the 3 great sects, Dugu Chioma was left out in the cold. Primordial desolation, he is. Dugu murmured. He is a sky pride of the Mystic Demon Palace, ranked 11th on the blood ranking. His strength is not weak, but his brother, Yuan Hua, is even more powerful. Qingqing said solemnly. Yuan Hua, the one ranked 3rd on the blood ranking. Dugu Chioma raised his brows slightly. Yuan Hua of the Mystic Demon Palace was ranked 3rd on the blood ranking, just below Princess Luo Ho and the mysterious number 1 on the blood ranking. But this was nothing to Duguchilma. Even if Yuan Hua appeared in front of him, he would not have the slightest fear. Duguchilma did not have any feelings of fear or dread. Not only primordial desolation, but also Yang Buwei of the Six Desire Demon sect, ranked 12th on the blood ranking. Zhong Lai of the Demonic Beast sect, ranked 13th on the blood ranking. Qing Qing's face was extremely solemn. She did not have much confidence against Yang Buwei and Zhong Lai, let alone primordial desolation. But if they were to challenge, only Saintess Qing Qing and Holy Sun Yan Kun among the younger generation of the Sky Demon sect could resist them. Even Li Rui would not be of much use. Ha, let's cut the chit-chat and start the competition. Fan Yuan said with a fake smile. To put it nicely, it was a competition. To put it bluntly, it was bullying. Then, Elder Ku Yuan led the group to a square with a sullen face. There was a competition arena in the square. In the Sky Demon Mountain Range, many elders and disciples rushed over after hearing the news, but none of them looked good. Let's begin. There was no lengthy ceremony, and the competition began immediately. A disciple of the Mystic Demon Palace went up the arena and said arrogantly, "Anyone who comes up, I'll take them all." Hearing this, the group of Sky Demon sect disciples' noses became crooked from anger. They were one of the 6 major sects, but they were looked down upon. Soon, a Sky Demon sect disciple jumped into the arena. But in just a few breaths, he was ruthlessly thrown out of the arena. Elder Ku Yuan's old face twitched slightly. Then, the disciples of the Demonic Beast sect and the 6 Desire Demon sect also went up the arena one after another to spar with the Sky Demon sect disciples. But without exception, the Sky Demon sect disciples were thrown out of the arena one by one. The few who won could only be considered a Pyrrhic victory. The group of Sky Demon sect elders' faces were as black as the bottom of a pot. Duguchio Mo didn't even have the interest to take a look. Under such humiliation, a heavenly demon sect disciple suddenly roared, "Holy Sun Yan Kun, please take action and teach these arrogant people a lesson." "Yes, Sacred Sun Yan Kun, please do it." The heavenly demon sect's disciples present all shouted loudly. If it was before, Yan Kun wouldn't have the confidence to do it. But now, he had just broken through to the second layer of the divine dwelling, and Yuan Huang, who had defeated him before, was only at the first layer. Therefore, Yan Kun had absolute confidence that he could get back the face he had lost. He jumped into the arena with a step, his eyes cold and arrogant as he looked at Yuan Huang and shouted, "Yuan Huang, today we will wash away the shame of the past. Do you dare to come up to the arena and fight?" Yan Kun's aura of the second layer of the divine dwelling realm gushed out. It was quite imposing, and it drew cheers from the group of Sky Demon sect disciples. Li Rui's face was even more dazed and infatuated. Only such a man was worthy of her infatuation. As for people like Dugu Chioma who relied on false reputation, Li Rui didn't even spare him a glance. Ha, with Yan Kun, there shouldn't be any problems. Even Yuan Huang isn't Yan Kun's match. Elder Ku Yuan's face was quite calm, without the slightest worry. On the contrary, there was a trace of worry in Qingqing's eyes. Because she had carefully noticed that Yuan Huang's expression didn't change in the slightest because of Yan Kun's aura. Thinking of this, Qingqing couldn't help but look at Dugu Chioma. Dugu Chioma looked at Yan Kun and Yuan Huang with indifference, as if watching 2 ants fighting. Let's begin. On the arena, Yan Kun's aura was wild. Just as he was about to attack. On the other side, Yuan Huang grinned, revealing a cruel sneer. Then, under Yan Kun's almost lifeless gaze, a powerful aura that was equally powerful, and even more powerful than Yan Kun's, burst out from Yuan Huang's body. Yuan Huang's strength was also at the second layer of the divine dwelling realm. Moreover, the second layer of the divine dwelling realm was incomparably powerful, almost close to the third layer. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.